Where's,
Oh,
oh, never mind. Okay, yeah, sorry. I lost track of Mr.
you're kind of dark and mysterious, Mr. Lopez.
Yeah, I was trying to.
I think we're ready.
Okay, you have an overhead light. There you go. That's better.
Is it? Okay, there you go.
All right. Good evening and welcome to this called meeting of the Northside Board of Trustees. Before calling this meeting to order, the board would like to take just a moment to briefly review some of the rules for conducting our meeting tonight. Obviously, we are not in person. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by the Attorney General to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow video conferencing meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. I'll now ask Mrs. McGee to call the roll of trustees.
Dr. Hall,
Present.
Ms. Freeman,
Present.
Mr. Medina,
Present.
Mr. Lopez,
Present.
Mr. Blunt,
Present.
Ms. Reed,
Present.
And Ms. Chumley
and
has, yeah, she said she'll be late. So thanks. Okay, in accordance with those suspended rules mentioned before, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conferencing, and we are meeting by use of a software application which allows two-way communication for members of the public. As we would in any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to address a specific agenda item will be unmuted for 3 minutes to speak. If the speaker submitted written comments in advance, an electronic copy will be provided to all trustees. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. The order of business for this meeting is set out in the agenda. The meeting will then be officially called to order. Please bow your heads as Trustee Medina leads us in the invocation.
Almighty and merciful God, we ask you for your guidance and blessings upon this board, students, parents, patrons, teachers, and administrators. As we assemble here this evening in the common pursuit of this great nation's wealth, our children, amen.
amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. Before we go on with our board meeting, I'd like to say a few words and hopefully address some of the concerns and comments that citizens to be heard have signed up today. On behalf of the entire Northside Board of Trustees and our Superintendent, Dr. Woods, I'd like to thank everyone who is present in our board meeting tonight and all who have shared your concerns, your comments, your ideas to date. This is what makes Northside so wonderful. We always say Northside family, but this is truly what a family is. People who are caring and supportive. Like many of you, we have children, grandchildren, family members, colleagues, neighbors, and friends in Northside and want to make sure that the most effective and safest ways to reopen our schools for the entire Northside family is actualized. We also want to assure everyone that we hear you, and just like you, we are truly united in prioritizing our students and staff's health and well-being. We are keeping these priorities alongside the faces of our employees and students in all decision-making efforts. Many of our plans to date that include best practices in social distancing, PPE, sanitation, reducing number of people in building, facilities updates, technology needs, etc., challenge Governor Greg Abbott's and the Texas Education Agency's mandates. As such, they may not be funded or required. However, we are working with TAs, state leaders, along with superintendents and school boards in advocating for additional funding for and flexibility in these decisions and initiatives to ensure we have the safest, healthiest, and highest quality schools and instructional programs for our Northside students and staff. We could certainly use your voice at the state level to amplify this message. Knowing that we share your concerns, we ask for your patience, input, and support as we deliberate, develop, and communicate comprehensive plans that protect our Northside family members and provide the best educational experiences as we move forward. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Dr. Woods, would you like to share a few words?
Thanks, Dr. Harrell. I really appreciate that. I think that was really well said. And I know from the heart of all of the trustees, as the members of this call probably know, we are operating under guidance issued to us from the state. And we're planning to restart school under that guidance. But that doesn't mean, as Dr. Harrell indicated, that we necessarily like or think all the guidance is appropriate for Northside. And so we are advocating. I spend time literally every day advocating for better guidance, for guidance that gives school districts more flexibility in the way that we open our schools, that gives school districts the ability to consider what local health experts are saying instead of a blind one-size-fits-all model for a really diverse state like Texas. So please understand that we are advocating for that guidance. We're also advocating that it come very soon, because we all know we're running out of time with regard to the start of school. And we want to stand something up that our parents and our students and our staff feels confident in, whether that's in person or distance, so that folks can feel confident in coming back to school. We're desperate to restart school. We realize that for some people that will be staying or remaining in distance learning, and we believe that's going to be a really robust offering. We also know that some families want their children back in our schools, need their children back in our schools, and we're looking at everything we can do to make that as safe as possible for students and for staff. So again, thanks, Dr. Hall, for that opportunity. This is the work that we've been doing since April, and we will do it well. And we will get as much information out as soon as we possibly can. We anticipate perhaps even late this week, improved guidance from the state that would allow us a little bit more flexibility with at least how we start the beginning of the school year. And so hopefully that will be coming soon. Thanks. Dr. Harrell,
Carol, you're on mute. You're on mute, Carol.
Thank you. I was just extending thanks and appreciation as well. So, and I see that Ms. Chumbley has joined us. So we are now ready to move on to consent agenda number 9, contractor for asbestos abatement. Recommended action approval.
Just real quick, Dr. Harrell, this is a condition at a building that we're in the process of renovating. As the board knows, we came across this condition, and normally we would bring this to a regular meeting, but that will hold this project up. And so would appreciate the board's consideration at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Is there any discussion? Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, is there a motion before the floor? Mr. Lopez.
I move that we approve the consent agenda item.
Second. Seconds come from Ms. Chumbley. I will do a roll call. All those in favor will say nay. All those opposed will say, all those in favor, sorry, say aye. All those opposed say nay. And any abstentions will move forward. Dr. Harrell, aye. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Medina?
Aye.
Mr. Lopez?
Aye.
Ms. Chumbley?
Aye.
Mr. Blunt?
Aye.
Ms. Reeds? Ms. Reed? Let's see, I'm looking for Ms. Katie. You're muted.
Okay, there it goes finally. Did you hear me now?
Yes. Did you say
Aye.
aye?
Yes.
All right. All right, it's been approved, and now we will move to item 10, curriculum and instruction, district calendar. However, Dr. Woods, you did say that there's been some citizens who have signed up to be heard to this agenda item, right?
Yes, ma'am, there are. I think the decision for the board is, would you prefer to have that come before the presentation that Dr. Jordan makes or after?
Carol, I prefer that we do.
Ms. Chubley, you went to mute.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I prefer, my suggestion, if it's the will of the board, is that let's see the presentation, because if there's some questions about when we're starting, this may help to answer some of those from some of the individuals that want to speak to the board tonight, or,
Great.
Speak to this agenda item.
Okay, I'm seeing some head nodding. Is there any other comments before we move on with that suggestion? All right, thank you, Ms. Chubley. We will now move with Dr. Jordan sharing curriculum and instruction, and then have citizens. Thank you.
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Harrell, Dr. Woods, Board of Trustees. I will share my screen. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, so tonight we're bringing to you for your consideration and approval some slight changes to next year's instructional calendar. So just as a quick overview, as you recall, in 2015, during the legislative session, a change was made to move from the requirement of a certain number of days of attendance to a certain number of minutes. So this gave districts some wiggle room when they were planning their schedule. So students must attend 75,600 minutes. Also, the ruling is that the first instructional day must be no earlier than the fourth Monday in August, and the last instructional day must be no earlier than May 15th. Any district who has start dates or end dates outside of that requirement has applied for a District of Innovation status. So back in September 2019 was when we brought forward to you to review and consider approval of the 2020-21 calendar. So just as a review, this calendar that you approved has the first day of school starting Monday, August 24th, with the last day of school being Thursday, June 3rd. Probably the one different piece of this calendar that you approved from calendars in the past is it had the first semester ending at winter break. So it had the first semester ending in December as opposed to the third week in January. If you recall, we brought forward to you a lot of feedback we'd received from teachers and from principals and also from parents that this was a desirable change for our students. You see the minutes that the adopted calendar has, and again, 75,600 minutes is the requirement. So you can see that we definitely exceed that requirement. And as in years past, we've had 5 professional development days that are also student holidays. So you see those listed there. And then we also have staff work days that are prior to school starting, which are Monday, August 17th through Friday, August 21st. So we're coming back to you to bring this calendar that you've already adopted to perhaps consider some slight changes. The reason why we're bringing it back, clearly the COVID disruption that we had in the spring semester. We know certainly you've heard of summer slide. We're also talking about the potential COVID slide of how can we capture some more instructional time for our students. We know that we're going to have increased safety and security protocols to ensure our students and our staff and our parents are safe. And we want to make sure that our teachers have the time that they need to plan, to prepare, so that they can be successful and feel comfortable in their work environment. So what I'm going to share with you here are two potential options, and we will be making a recommendation on these options. So the first option is to leave the calendar as is, to only make really one minor adjustment. That's why it says adopted with an asterisk, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It's moving one PD day from October to November. So when we really fleshed out pros and cons, a pro of this calendar is it aligns with community expectations because we have publicized, it's been on our website. It allows teachers to continue to have their professional learning, which is critically important, and it's the same length of day that we've had in the past. Some of the cons, although we do have a cushion over 75,600 minutes, it's not as large of a cushion that we perhaps would want to have given potential changes with COVID as we go forward. We also know that additional procedures that we'll be putting in place to ensure the safety of our students and our staff may cut into instructional time. So the second option is the calendar you adopted, however, adding additional minutes to each day. So we've configured, if we were to add 15 minutes to the elementary, middle, and high school day, you see those are extra days that we would gather. And then further in the agenda, we're also going to be asking for your approval to submit a staff development waiver that will pad these additional days, 4 additional days. So we feel this also aligns with community expectations because it does not change the start date, it doesn't change the end date, it doesn't change spring break. We feel another pro is it really provides more time to focus on all levels of instruction. It still provides teachers professional learning and will allow us the opportunity to put into play the additional protocols for safety and security while also being able to provide our students with additional remediation and enrichment. So there, are cons. It's a longer work day, adding 15 minutes. It's a longer day for students, a longer day for staff. But in our mind, the mitigation of the learning that students have lost, along with the promise to keep them safe, along with our teachers, helps to balance out some of the cons. So moving on, in addition, so we're looking at, do we keep the calendar as is with that one minor change? Or do we do option 2, add minutes? Then the second proposal.
Dr. Jordan, Ms. Chumbley has a question.
Yes.
Ms. Chumbley?
So Janice, talk to me a minute though. So where would we be adding the 15 minutes?
That has not been wholly determined at this point, but we've talked initially, possibly at the end of the day. We certainly would need to balance transportation routes, that kind of thing.
So you're wanting us to support a calendar change, but we don't have all of the information in it, then, since we don't know, I mean, I think that is a factor that would, that's a factor that I would like to know is where are we putting that 15 minutes that you're asking us to add to the calendar?
Yes, well, we don't know how many children are going to avail themselves of transportation next year. We don't know where UIL is going to stand on practices, all kinds of things that could say, high school can only go so far. We need to add 5 on the front, 10 at the end because it runs into practice. So there are several unknowns that we have. All we do know is we recommend that we need 15 additional minutes, and then working with administration and with all the other moving parts, we will decide the best place to put those minutes so that we can run a schedule to get students to and from school to participate in extracurricular activities in a way that maximizes their opportunities.
See, Janice, from what you're asking us on this, though, because I've there's some factors in it that that I think have real merit, but a lot of those would only come into play depending upon where you have that additional time on it. I mean, because we're talking about that we think there may be some safety standards that may have to be met or implemented that would kind of delay the start piece of it. If we're talking about 5 minutes in the morning and 10 in the afternoon, I'm not quite sure I'm seeing where we have the full benefit of what you're talking about, or what that benefit is shown as. Brian, can you weigh in here, please?
Yeah, I'm going to also ask Ray to see. I know Ray's been and his people been doing a lot of thinking on this from a transportation standpoint, because that's part of the complexity here. So, Ray, you got anything you want to add on that front?
Yes, sir. Through our discussions, the 15 minutes would be added at the end of the day for all levels. As it is now, even a 5-minute addition in the morning would pick up children even earlier. And so the ripple effect is really the one factor that we worry about. And after a lot of discussion, including with transportation, felt that the 15 minutes would be more productive at the end of the day for each of them. And so as you go through the day, the efficiency of the bus drivers and pickup and drop off, obviously in the evening, is what we were most concerned about. And that also gives you, again, the whole, if you will, the whole 15 minutes that we could be more productive with, we felt, in one chunk rather than breaking it up as you described.
So are you ready to recommend then the 15 minutes at the end? And then Brian, I just feel much more comfortable being asked to approve something, adopt a change where we know when the 15 minutes is on it. Because I really don't believe that there's a benefit if we're splitting it up. I don't see adding 5 in the morning and 10 in the afternoon. So I mean, if that's where you're generally headed, is to add the 15 at the end, which would allow some flexibility in the morning as kids are checking in. But I don't want to tie your hands, but I'm not comfortable being asked to say yes to this or change what we have without knowing exactly what it is that we're moving into.
Yeah, it sounds like the transportation is going to dictate the answer, so it'll need to go at the end, all 3 levels.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Freeman, you have a question? Thanks, Ms. Chumley.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Harrell. Of course, Dr. Woods, this calendar does not, I know we've talked about what our thoughts are regarding either distance learning or students 100% in our schools. I know, though, that we're looking for additional flexibility in where we might have, I hate to say hybrid, because that's been a challenging piece right now, but let's say we did that. So this calendar doesn't address anything like that. And I'm saying not for us to determine that right now, but for those people that are listening. Can you please elaborate on what might be forthcoming?
I would love to be able to do that.
Or tell us what we don't know. What does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So what we're contemplating tonight are, as Janice indicated, small changes to the calendar that was already board approved, because we think that that information needs to be out to families and to our staff as soon as we can. What we also know, though, is that unlike in other years, this calendar may be subject to further review by this board because conditions may dictate that. Obviously, we're trying to stand up a situation where a public health situation that would happen in an in-person school setting would allow us to go immediately to distance learning and not be a major disruption to the school year. But we've got to be open to the ever-changing nature of what we're dealing with here. So we're waiting to Ms. Freeman's question. We're waiting on guidance from the state with regard to how much flexibility will we have to control the capacity of people in our building. Right now, after a very brief ramp up time, the answer is virtually none. And we've asked for more flexibility on that front. And that might create a different, if that were granted, that might create a different day-to-day schedule for students in our buildings. But without that guidance, it's very difficult to talk specifically about what that could look like. And so we present this calendar as kind of a general idea of how we see the school year given what we know today.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, did you have a question?
No, it was answered already. Thank you.
Okay, and Janice, I just had a real quick question, a couple quick questions, I guess. So if families chose distance learning, either synchronistically done or asynchronistically done, that same 15 minutes is part of that. So it doesn't matter if you're in person or at home learning, it's still an added 15 minutes for everybody, right?
Well, that's kind of comparing apples and oranges. So if you recall, when we reviewed TEA guidance, and to echo Dr. Wood's, comment, new guidance is coming out, it feels like on a daily basis. So yes, students in the distance learning environment must be engaged on a daily basis. There are a certain number of minutes that a student must be active and engaged in order for that day to count. It is not a minute-to-minute, always a minute-to-minute comparison in the face-to-face environment for completely logical reasons. But really the nut or the core of this issue is the reason why we feel we need additional minutes is because students need additional time to go deeper in instruction. And so to that end, in the distance learning environment, we will build in much opportunities for students to also go deep with instruction. So although it's not a minute-to-minute comparison, the type of curriculum, the quality of instruction, the depth of the activities, and the learning that the students do will be equivalent.
Thank you. The other question real quick is, and I think Dr. Wood, you answered it, as things come, if this calendar is approved so that our families do know start dates and vacation and all of that, we can revisit calendars and even possibly consider, because I've had some community members and families ask questions about going back to what you were just sharing, Dr. Jordan. Will distance learning have the same calendar? Will it have the same amount of time? How will that work out? And I know that's coming. So this calendar is really for in-person for the most part, except for holidays and vacation and.
Well, this is the district calendar. So the start date, the end date, the teacher professional learning days, the holidays, all of those are the same no matter where a student is receiving his or her instruction or where a teacher is delivering his or her instruction.
Thank you very much for making those comments. Ms. Chubley, do you have another question or comment?
I do, Janice. So if it's the district calendar, what we have been saying that is going to be different than what it was in the spring is that we're going back to school as school. So you've got to go to so many classes, you have to go to so many classes. If this is the district calendar, then this should be the district calendar where whether I'm learning at home, if I'm learning virtually, or if I'm learning in the classroom. So I'm not understanding your statement that we're comparing apples to oranges and that that's not going to apply, that we're going to find other times to do additional support or enrichment within the day. But if we're allocating X number of days, minutes, and for classes that kids are taking, Janice, I'm really confused on that. If we're setting a calendar, it needs to be a calendar with the times that are set and the expectations set. If we're telling kids going back to school virtually is the same as going back to school in the classroom, and we know that there's going to be some one-offs, but let's use an 80-20 rule. 80%, let's say, if we're going back to school virtually, then it's going to be as close to what we would be doing in the classroom. So I'm not understanding that this time, if we're extending 15 minutes for kids in the classroom, that we're not extending 15 minutes for kids that are learning virtually. I need help.
So let me, I think I can help.
Absolutely am very uncomfortable.
I think I can help.
That's not
So first of all, there's one calendar, and it's the district calendar. So as I mentioned, first day of school is first day of school, last day of school is last day of school, the PD days, all of those kinds of things. Same calendar, same curriculum, same level of expectation, all focused on the essential knowledge and skills. If you recall, on Friday, we talked about one of the big changes we were moving was in the spring when we were in the COVID crisis, the whole state. The focus was on instructional support. So as we transform into our new normal, the focus is on high quality instruction, no matter which environment you're in. So all of your comments to that effect, of that being the expectation, couldn't be more true. What we can't control is we can't control the rules that TEA gives to us about how our students will get funded in the distance learning environment. So the latest information, again, that we received last week about the number of minutes they needed to be active in the environment. And if you remember that it was a 22-page document that, you know, seems like we get those, you remember that, we get those so often. And it purposely talked about how students in an asynchronous environment, in the distance learning environment, they may be turning in a lesson or an activity at 11 p.m. at night. They may be finishing up, let's say it's a required Zoom meeting that, you know, the teacher said you need to watch this Zoom and, you know, write this paper. That student may be doing it at 5:30 in the morning. We know when our children come to a physical building, we don't start class at 5:30 and we don't have teachers still teaching at 11 p.m. But we know in the distance learning environment, in that asynchronous environment, the way they use time can vary. So the latest we have from TEA is they gave us a list of minutes that students have to be active in, that you have to show in an LMS. And so that's what we're working with now. But to your point, Ms. Chumley, about one calendar for the entire district, absolutely, that's where we are right now, that's truly the case.
Well, I'm thinking, so Janice, I understand that, but the asynchronous learning environment, other than the learning management system, I'm not looking at that's a whole lot different than a student that's doing his homework at 11 o'clock at night when they're in an in class, when they're going to school in person. We've got kids that are doing work at 5:30 in the morning. We've got kids that are doing work at 11 o'clock at night. So to me, that's not different. What I'm talking about is in relation to what the teacher expectation is, though. Because if we're saying that we're going to have our teachers, because one of the pros and cons that you put up there was that staff is working longer days. So if we're talking that we have a higher expectation for staff in school to work a longer day, then I would think that we would have that same expectation for staff that's doing virtual learning. And so I understand it's one calendar, it's saying days, but that's not, saying one calendar is not talking the same of what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is my expectation for our staff in person is going to be the same in the amount of time that they're putting in as the expectation for staff in a virtual learning environment. And you can say it if you want to say, well, they may do 6 hours in the morning and they may do, you know, they may have a class where they need to meet with their kids or they need to help those students that are doing asynchronous in the LMS system, that's fine. If we're talking about in virtual, we may have teachers that are doing it where their hours may be broken up. But if I have an expectation for teachers in class to work so many hours, I believe it's only fair and right to have that same expectation for teachers that are working in a virtual environment. And if that's not the case, then that's something that I would like to know before we talk about adopting a change in the time on a calendar.
Yes, and so my comments were about the work on the student end. So when I talk about how TEA put guidelines of how many minutes students must be engaged in order to get funding, TEA doesn't say they've got to be engaged, you know, from 8 a.m. to whatever. Your questions are about the expectations of a classroom teacher or of staff, and I would say absolutely, Ms. Chumley. I mean, the expectations are that the work that you do, the instruction that you deliver, the work that you do with your professional learning community is in the distance learning environment is tantamount to the face-to-face environment. So absolutely. And this calendar really isn't addressing that per se. I'm really glad you asked that question because I do want to clarify there's not different expectations of if you're in distance learning, you work a 4-hour day and you're done. If you're face-to-face, you do this. No, ma'am, that's not the case. I will say just, and I know we talked about it on Friday, and I do think this is worth noting because we learned so much, as everyone did through the COVID crisis, you know, going to distance learning in less than 24 hours, is there are certain challenges that delivering instruction in distance learning, you know, can bring about, such as, you know, teachers needing to contact students and be available, you know, many hours beyond. And we know all teachers do that, absolutely. One of the things, as we shared with you guys, is we are setting up a comprehensive help desk 24/7 for students to be able to call so that we can really work to balance the workload of whether a teacher's in person or a teacher's in distance learning.
I guess what, you know, Janice, the reason that I'm just so intent on it is because trustees have been hearing from teachers, and I appreciate that we're getting their input. And listening to the town halls, there was a lot of discussion about teachers, you know, really feeling like they wanted to opt to do virtual learning, virtual teaching. But I just think it's really important that we make sure at every moment to be transparent about what our expectation is for our teachers that decide to do virtual learning, virtual teaching, you know, because to me, there's a very big difference of where we were and what we were trying to accomplish in the spring versus where we are now and what that expectation is. And so I just want to make sure that we always keep that in the forefront, that we absolutely need to talk about how the academic program is going to look for our kids, but we really need to make sure that we're talking about it too as to how that academic program is going to look for our teachers as well. And so, you know, that extra 15 minutes that is going to be in the classroom is also going to be 15 minutes that our virtual teachers will have within the scope of time that the expectation is for them to be, you know, because Janice, you talked about setting up time for teachers to contact their kids, but I know many times during the school year when we have kids in school where teachers spend their evenings calling parents. And they do that now. So, I mean, it's for us to say that we're setting up time in a virtual environment, classroom teachers do that now all the time. You know, that's not, to me, a different expectation from what our teachers have always been doing when they want to make sure that they're staying in touch with their kids. So I appreciate you clarifying that, Janice.
Yes. Well, and Ms. Chumley, I just want to thank you for that, because one of the things, you know, part of this plan that we're going to be developing with, as a matter of fact, we have a group of teachers that are going to be working with us. The state has every district that has to create a distance learning plan. And one piece of it is exactly what you're describing. It says districts must communicate very clearly to parents, to students, and to teachers what the expectation is in the distance learning environment. And the reason to do that is what you said at the very beginning, is because now we're transforming to the expectation that it's high quality instruction, no matter which environment you're in. So we've got to make sure we have high standards of both. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Chumley. Mr. Lopez, you had a question.
Yes, I have really two questions. First of all, Janice, you mentioned about UIL not putting out regulations as far as to why you couldn't really determine why we would put the last 15 minutes at the end of the day. But UIL did come out recently, I think, with standards and leaving it up to the district and how they would, start practice or anything having to do with UIL. So didn't they give us the actual authority or say, hey, to the district?
Yes. Those comments are about anyone who knows a high school schedule, as you very well do. Their extracurriculars and the practice time, hugely complex.
Right.
And so the idea of where to add, it's not about just adding something somewhere, it's looking at what is it going to butt up against.
Right.
I know in other districts, I know we're looking at adding minutes, have done this rodeo in other districts, and it was so interesting. Even adding X number of minutes at a certain time, if it gets close to rush hour, it can change the arrival time a good 20 or 30 minutes. So really, Mr. Lopez, it's more about the idea of where we put the minutes at the end of the day. How do we also preserve students participating, whether it be sports, fine arts, math club, that we don't run into a time that, curtails their participation.
Sure.
That's all that meant. I will also tell you that the feedback that we're getting from all kinds of organizations, continues to be very fluid.
So I completely understand that. So, but thanks for clarifying that. My next question has to do with, we're extending the work day, the class day for a student and for a teacher, and it's kind of like, those days are longer. Will it change? Will we add minutes to their lunch, to the teacher's lunch? Or because we know as it is, the teacher's day is hectic. They're making phone calls or responding to emails during their lunch, never really having an actual full 30-minute lunch, or the expectation is you have lunch duty, you have to be at this, post at this time, so, adding that last, those minutes to the end of the day, I think just makes it for a longer period and more stressful for the teacher. In my mind, I'm just not seeing it. I'm having a hard time looking at that and accepting that. I mean, because I can guarantee you the teachers are already overloaded as it is. At the end of the day is their last day of saying, hey, I'm going to try to detach, but they can't, obviously, because they're either doing tutoring or things like that. It's just making that day a lot longer. So I'm having a hard time with that as well. So, or at least I am. So thank you, though. I appreciate it. Just wanted to share my comments.
I'll jump in on that a little bit. So I want to go back to what Janice said kind of early in this presentation around the rationale for the 15 minutes. I think we're trying to do probably three things. One is deal with learning loss from the spring and try to mitigate that. We know that at least for a while, the protocols that we put in place to get students in buildings will take some time. It won't be as seamless to get kids in buildings as it used to be. And then the third thing is we want to try to account for disruption that's going to happen this year and try to mitigate it. So that's really the source of the recommendation on the minutes.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Blunt, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the conversation that's occurred so far. Let me know if I sort of got this right. And I'll focus on the 15 minutes, but that throws in a lot of different areas, I know. If I understand the 15 minutes, what we're really talking about there, I know we say the end of the day, but really we're just talking about, we're going to say what the start time is going to stay the same, where it is in elementary, middle, and high school. At the end of the day, you just add 15 minutes to it. So that's the first part, if I have that correct. And
Yes.
within that, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
Okay. And then within that is how that 15 minutes to be allocated is what, again, they started out to say that's something you're going to work through as a district in terms of, that could go 2 minutes to each period, depending if it's middle and high school, maybe a little different elementary. And that's something that needs to be worked out on the distribution, with the idea being that, one, we know that we need potentially more instructional time. Two, we know that our COVID-19 situation may require some additional safety measures that would eat into what is seen as instructional time in the other assumption, right? And something like band, you may spend a little bit more time afterwards, et cetera. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. Well said.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Dr. Jordan, I had a real quick one. Just because we have attendees on that, I'm not sure know what LMS stands for and PD. Those were two acronyms. Can you quickly share LMS and PD?
Sure. LMS stands for Learning Management System, which is it can be a web-based software type system that allows instructional delivery, assessment, monitoring of students' progress, recording of their engagement. And then PD is professional development, or PL, professional learning. I think we interchange those. Thank you, Dr. Harrell. I know we
have our own
sli-
language sometimes. No, it's
yes,
all, it's all good.
we slide into that. Okay, so we talked about, again, calendar is that you guys adopted in September, and then this proposed change, which would be adding 15 minutes. Mr. Blunt, I think you summarized it very, very well. So remember the plan that I talked to you about on Friday that every district must submit, and the plan has 4 pieces. One of those pieces is instructional schedule. So it's just as Mr. Blunt was describing, where we will need to submit instructional schedules that show how we're using time for safety and security for our children and staff, how we're using time to remediate and to provide enrichment, all of those pieces. So it's to use those 15 minutes to accomplish those goals.
Thank you.
So I'll go.
So I'm just going to ask for the wishes of the board. This is for approval. And so I'm just wondering if we would like to go ahead, because we do have citizens signed up to speak to calendar.
Dr. Harrell, I have one other piece on the calendar about the 9-week schedule.
Oh, please go forward. Thank you.
Okay, so let me
give trustees a minute to think about. Great, thank you.
Okay, let me get this here, present.
And while you're getting it up, Mr. Blunt, did you have another question? I see your hand up.
I will make sure I push that button to take it down. Thank you.
Okay, so the next piece is something that we are proposing, and this is a change to the length of grading periods in our secondary schools, in middle and high school. As you know, our elementaries are on 9-week grading periods, and our middle and high schools are on 6-week grading periods. So the way to look at these options, if you take a look at the far left, option 1, that's the calendar as you currently adopted it. It's got 6-week grading periods for secondary. The first semester ends at winter break. Remember, that was the one change that was made. And I want you to note the length of the first semester and second semester. This is already the adopted calendar. First semester is 16 weeks. Second semester is 21 weeks. I know September was a while back, but we had a really good conversation about moving from where the district would always try to balance first and second semester in number of weeks. That's why first semester ended in January. But the reality is more weeks are needed in the spring due to extensive testing that has only been ramped up due to remediation of students, a whole host of things. So option 1 is basically keep everything as it is now. Option 2 is to move our secondary to 9-week grading periods instead of 6-week grading periods. You see the result, and then ending at winter break, first semester at winter break. You see that the first semester is the same length as it was in the original option, as is second semester. One of the pros of this piece, again, is it aligns with staff expectations in terms of ending the first semester at winter break, which our currently adopted calendar does. It gives us 4 grading period transitions instead of 6, which, as we know, we're anticipating moving between face-to-face instruction, distance learning as we move forward. That is a benefit. And it gives students more time for remediation and enrichment in order to get their grade where they need it to be successful. Option 3 is also moving to the 9 weeks period, and but the difference is the first semester ends after winter break. So you see some of the same benefits again in 4 grading period transitions instead of 6. So you have more time for remediation and enrichment. But this is a step back from kind of the progress we were working to make to have more days in the spring due to those interruptions, as I had mentioned, and what the staff was clear that they wanted. So just to show you through what these calendars would look like. So this calendar right here is the same calendar you've already adopted with one minor change. Notice the November 3rd day, you see that that's circled. That's a student holiday, staff development day that initially was on October 12th. We moved it from October 12th to November 3rd so that during the election day, we did not have those children in the building when we were undergoing voting. So this calendar that's the only change. It still has secondary on 6 weeks. It has the first semester ending at winter break. This second calendar also has the October 12th PD date moved to November 3rd. So the difference in this calendar is it moves the secondary schedule to 9 weeks. So that's the difference. So you'll see where those 9 weeks end. This is the calendar that has the 9-week period ending at winter break. Then this third calendar has secondary moved to 9 weeks, but it has the first semester ending at January 15th. So it simply moves it from the winter break to the 15th. It also has the move from October 12th to November 3rd. So our recommendation is that we take the calendar that was already adopted by the board, we make one change, which is moving the October 12th PD day to the student holiday, move that to November 3rd. We keep start, end date the same, other holidays the same. And we added an additional 15 minutes to accomplish loss of learning and ensuring of safety of our teachers and our staff and our students. We also recommend that the secondary schedule be moved to 9 weeks. And we are recommending that it end at winter break. And Dr. Harrell, that concludes the report.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board? So, and that last calendar real quick was calendar number 2, the second draft.
Yes, ma'am. Calendar number 2 is what we're recommending. Yes.
And since I don't see any other hands, Oh, Ms. Chumley. You're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
I was just waiting to see if any other trustees had a question.
Thank you.
So when I'm looking at this, it's not really 9 weeks though, because am I reading this incorrectly? Because it says on that, so it says when we do the 6 weeks, first and second are 5 weeks. The third grading week was 6, and then fourth, fifth, and sixth was 7 weeks. But on that option 2, you actually don't even have a 9 week. You have an 8 week for the first and second grading period. Then you have a 10 week for the third grading period, and you have an 11 week for the fourth grading period. So I just, Janice, can you speak to that? Is there, I mean, what are the pros and cons of that? I mean, obviously we've tried to keep to 6 weeks and 9 week schedules, but that's not the only one that really truly gives you 9 weeks is the option 3, which gives you 3 grading periods that are actually 9 weeks and just 1 grading period that is 10 weeks.
Yes, Ms. Chumley, great observation. And so in times past, many districts, they would really operate to try to have all the grading periods the same length. And that would make sense as you approach creating a calendar. The reality is, with the amount of testing that we do all throughout the system that has continued to ramp up, the testing hits very heavily in the spring. In addition, it's in the spring. Students get remediation throughout the entire year, but often in the spring they get more remediation, especially if they didn't pass the first semester. So just as the calendar you guys have already adopted, y'all adopted the calendar in September, and that calendar had, it wasn't an even 6 weeks. It purposely had the spring semester heavier.
Talked about that.
So really, so you're 100% right. So when we talk about, you know, a 6 week schedule, a 9 week schedule, it's cleaner than to say 8, 8, 10, 11, or 5, 6, 7, 5. But if you were to go back and look at calendars throughout the year, you're always going to find those different numbers of weeks within a span. The big difference with the one you guys adopted, and again the one we're bringing forward here, is in having the first semester end at winter break, because the way that first and second semester has been mitigated is by pushing winter break into the third week of January. And it was nearly unanimous from our teachers, our principals, to say students are going to winter break, then they're coming back and taking final exams 2 weeks into January. And this was actually one of Anthony Jarrett's last projects. And we talked about it at length in academics, where he and his staff actually went in and listed every day lost for instruction due to testing. So that's the reasoning, Ms. Chumley.
Okay, so we're actually then extending 9 weeks to 11 weeks to accommodate testing and remediation.
We are ending several things. First, we recommend ending first semester at winter break.
Which, you know, Janice, for years, you know, I've been on the board a long time, and for years we've had that debate where, and there's always been a split with teachers that some don't mind if it goes over, you know, some absolutely want it. So, I mean, that's a variable, I think, that we are always going to have, that you're going to have people on both sides of that.
Well, when Anthony surveyed the group, it wasn't much of a variable. It was about 90%, including those who taught semester courses. The bind that we're in, Ms. Chumley, is if we want to end at winter break, which that was the lion's share for a whole host of reasons, to have those students take their final exams so that when they come back in January, they can start on fresh instruction instead of then having to do a week review because they've just had a 2-week break. Teachers had talked about the loss of instruction there. We can't start school till after the 4th Monday in August. So if we're going to end at winter break, which we know has to be before Christmas, and we can't start school till the 4th week of August, just mathematically, you only have X number of days for your first semester. So that's kind of, that also impacts the length.
Talk about then the difference. So if I'm teaching a semester course in both the fall and the spring, same course, where is the additional, what am I taking out of it in the spring, in the fall, and what am I adding in it to accommodate those additional weeks in the spring?
Well, you know, remember in the spring, those teachers lose instructional time as well with their students because their students are testing. They may not have a state test in their semester course, but students who take state tests are missing their semester course. So the essential knowledge and skills are the same, whether it's fall or spring, the curriculum same, the instructional resource. Literally, our teachers lose valuable instructional time in the spring. You know, we've worked on it in curriculum for a long time. When you look at balancing the scope and sequence, when the reality is, when you literally take out those days where those students aren't moving in the curriculum because they're sitting in a state test, it actually evens it out more than you would think it would when you look at the sheet
I would
numbers.
just hate to say that we're having an 11-week grading period because we're having to accommodate 2 additional weeks for testing. What a terrible statement is that, if that's, and I'm not quite sure, Janice, that we would have to go back and look and really see how many days out we have for testing in that second semester, but 2 weeks seems really excessive. That's the case, we have a whole nother conversation after we get through COVID.
Yes, ma'am, agreed.
Well, let's remember, we provide access to PSAT and SAT for all of our students. We have tremendous numbers of students taking advanced placement courses in Northside. So it's not just state testing that we're talking about, right? These are kids who are doing advanced coursework, and it's tied to testing days. Each one of those tests means multiple class periods missed. So
well, we have all the end of course exams, and those are all at that during that time period as well.
they are.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so I mean, I understand it. I just didn't realize, though, it just seemed odd that we were talking about going to a nine-week grading period when we're really not. None of the weeks that we're talking about, none of the 4 weeks are 9 weeks. They're not. They're 8 and 10 and 11. So I don't know. That just caught me as strange, but it absolutely makes sense with what you're talking about. And if y'all, can you just real quickly, what has been the reasoning as to why we have been on 6-week grading periods for secondary all this time and have never gone to a 9-week? Can you tell us why there has been a reasoning, and it could have been that's a preference?
I can talk a little bit about that. Long before we had widespread access to electronic ways for students and parents to monitor their grades and progress, there was a thought that we needed more frequent reporting to parents at secondary. And I think those times have significantly changed. Most of our parents, and certainly the vast majority of our secondary students, look at their grades on a regular basis in the electronic system.
So then let me ask you, Brian, about the other piece of it with no pass, no fail, because there's periods where, and with a 6-week period, does it give children, our students, an easier advantage to be able to get caught? I mean, I'm worried about that too, because I know that there are some set times that when a grading period ends, it affects students' participation in specific events because they don't have that ability. So have we thought about that within the scope of this? Is that going to have any impact on our students in relation to being able to participate in extracurricular when we get extracurricular back?
Yeah, we deal with this on a regular basis. Health Careers has been on a 9-week grading cycle for, I think, its entire existence. What happens is you apply the UIL calendar, which has measures of 6-week progress, to the 9-week calendar. And so teachers report essentially a progress report at the 6-week mark. and that's what counts towards UIL eligibility. Again, we've been doing this for years.
So if they're failing, Brian, at that 6-week count, even though it's on a 9-week grading period, then
Not be eligible.
and they're still not eligible.
That's accurate.
Brian, we need to make absolutely sure with us going to this that our students understand that they are still going to have an eligibility requirement that will be looked at on a 6-week basis. Because if I'm a kid and I think I've got 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks to catch myself up and not be held to that, I just think we really need to make sure that kids understand that it's still going to be 6 weeks where their no play is going to come into effect. We need to make sure parents understand that too, so they're not asking in relation to having this extension, why, if I'm on a 9-week grading period, am I being held to a 6-week standard?
Yeah, I think we can lean on coaches and program sponsors to help us explain that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Shumley. Any other questions? Dr. Jordan, just remind us real quickly that NEIC, the Northside Education Improvement Council, looked at these and also wanted draft 2 as well.
Yes, we always, whenever we bring to you guys the calendar recommendations, the calendar you approved in September, it goes through several stages of feedback, and one of those is the NEIC.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we take a vote, we are going to go ahead and move to citizens to be heard. And I need to read the rules for addressing the board. For those citizens who have signed up, we value your opinions and we will listen to what you have to say. Although we are restrained by law from taking any action at this time. So please address your remarks to the board. Confine your remarks, please, to a Northside policy or practice, and in this case, it's the instructional calendar. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, Superintendent Woods will ask that you wrap up your remarks, and please do not make any personal attacks on individuals. Thank you. All right, Dr. Woods, who do we have first, or Ms. Kidd, who do we have first?
Dr. Harl, Michelle Torres.
Thank you.
Hi, I actually entered the wrong item, the wrong agenda item, and mine speaks more to human resources. So can I go ahead and speak after this, during that agenda item?
Yes, although I'm not sure I see a human resources agenda item.
Oh, I thought I saw it on there, or technology. I just don't think it's it doesn't apply to the calendar, what my statement regards.
So just very quickly, there's a staff development minutes waiver, a COVID-19 purchases, and then the superintendent has a couple items. I'm not sure, I don't see technology or HR. There are no items for this meeting at this time. There may be in 2 weeks at our regular meeting. This is a called meeting. So you might want to think about coming back if it's strictly in HR.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. See you in a
Yes,
couple
ma'am.
weeks. Appreciate it. Or you can email us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Harl, the next person signed up under this item is Marcos Antuña. I may or may not have that right.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Woods and members of the board. My last name is Antuña, thank you. I apologize, I signed up for 2 items to see which one was more relevant to my commentary, but I think the agenda item 16 might be more germane to what I have to say, so if I could speak at that moment, that might be better.
Okay, we will see you in a few minutes, Mr. Antuña.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry Caperton.
Ms. Caperton?
I'm sorry. Yes, my question is regarding the calendar were answered. And so I think the rest of what I have to questions about are going to best be answered with the superintendent's item 16.
Okay, all
All right,
right.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caperton.
And then the last person signed up under this item is Wanda Longoria.
Okay, Ms. Longoria?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We understand that the district is concerned about academic gaps or losses of academia. However, teachers are working so hard already to try to figure out what they're going to do with their family situation as well as their job situation. We've had many calls from teachers who are also parents of children in the school district. So as we go back to talk to them about what the district is considering with the calendar, I'm sure they're going to have even more questions, and we wish that we had been a little bit more alerted to this so that we could give them more feedback. We understand that there are no raises to be given this year, and we understand that that's partly due to lack of funding. That piece we can understand. What we don't understand is adding more time to our contract without any kind of hope for reimbursement of that time. You know, teachers give of their extra time all the time. I was a teacher for 36 years, almost 20 in this district. I cannot tell you how many times I sat at my desk at lunch, calling parents, trying to prepare for the afternoon classes for my special needs students. I needed to set up special situations for their learning. We don't understand adding more time at the end of the day, and this is why. After 36 years of teaching, I can tell you the hardest minutes of the day are the final 10 minutes when a teacher has to try to actively keep her students who are exhausted engaged so that they make that time valuable. Our day started at 8:30, and I was there at 7:45 tutoring students in the morning. Teachers are going to close those gaps because they understand the need to close those gaps. Administrators are very good about assigning people for morning homework center and after school homework center. Kids show up for those tutoring sessions, and we have teachers tutoring throughout the building every morning and every afternoon. So please keep this in mind when you make your decision. You are asking teachers to add 15 more minutes every day to their schedule. It is a daunting task that they have to do as it is. In addition to that, we are adding stress above stress when we don't really know what we're going back to this school year. Please understand, all teachers want to be there for their students. They have often mentioned they'd rather be nowhere else but in front of their class. Consider that as we go through this pandemic, one of the first things we need to consider is the mental, social, emotional well-being of students and their teachers, because teachers are only as good as they take care of themselves to be. We want the best for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Longoria. All right. At this time, I'm looking for a motion, please, for approval of the 2020-2021 district instructional calendar. Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and move to approve as presented.
Okay, Mr. Blunt has made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Freeman, second. I will do a roll call vote. I'm going to start from the bottom this time. Ms. Reed, how do you vote? Ms. Reed? See if you're on mute. Ms. Reed, you're still on mute. Okay, Ms. Reed, one more time. I'll come back. All right, Mr. Blunt?
Aye.
Ms. Oh, yes, I heard you. Ms. Reed, that was aye. Mr. Blunt, aye. Ms. Chumbley?
Aye.
Mr. Lopez?
Aye.
Mr. Medina?
Aye.
Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Carol Harrell, aye. The ayes have it. The calendar has been approved, and it was draft 2 calendar. Thank you for that. Dr. Jordan, 2020 and 2021 staff development minutes waiver.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is a waiver that we brought to you the last few years. TEA allows districts to, if approved for this waiver, to substitute professional development days and count those days towards the total instructional minutes. So if you submit this waiver, that means that you can recoup 2,100 minutes. We've done it each year, and so the waivers would apply to the 2 staff development days, which are November 3rd and February 15th, as well as the 2 teacher choice days. So we're simply asking for the board's approval for us to submit this waiver.
Okay, are there any questions or discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, is there a motion, please? Ms. Reed?
I'd move approval as presented.
Second.
And Ms. Chumley, you seconded. All right, roll call. Ms. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Blunt?
Aye.
Ms. Chumley?
Aye.
Mr. Lopez?
Aye.
Mr. Medina?
Aye.
Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Carol Harrell? Aye. The ayes have it. And so the minutes waiver was approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move down to item 12, business and finance COVID-19 purchases. Mr. Barajas, and this is recommended action for approval.
Thank you, Trustee Harrell. I wanted to cover the COVID-19 related expenditures the district has incurred since period from about March through late June. Next slide, please. Thank you, Leanne. In looking at all the different expenditures that we've been tracking early on in March, of course, we wanted to track all expenditures related to the crisis in the event that we would somehow get any kind of funding from the state or from the federal government to reimburse us for any of these expenditures. So in pulling all of this data and looking through it all, the 3 themes that emerge as far as what we've been buying over the last several months are into those 3 categories that you see: PPE and related, certainly wireless access for students. That's both the device and the service associated with those MiFi devices. And then instructional materials and printing. Going to the next slide, just give you kind of a feel for what falls into those different categories. The PPE and related, a lot of it was dealing with sanitizers and those other kinds of issues for cleaning. But we also did go in and buy the thermometers, face covers, and so on and so forth. Now, in the next slide, you'll see that we're going to be continuing to buy those. But as far as the other areas, in the areas related to the wireless access for students, again, those were the MiFi hotspots and the service associated with them. Instructional materials and printing, again, just a myriad of things that the district purchased to get ready for the online or the virtual instruction. And then planned purchases for 2021, student mobile devices, about $10.5 million to get ready for some kind of delivery method that we're eventually going to settle on for the next school year based on information from TEA. Teacher mobile devices, $2.3 million. The learning management system, Dr. Jordan talked about that. We're in the process now. We're reviewing those agreements so we can hopefully get that purchased relatively quickly this fiscal year, about $680,000. And it's going to be a continual purchase of hotspot replacements going into the next fiscal year. We'll certainly put those dollars into the proposed budget that the board will consider for adoption in August, and a continual replenishment of PPE and related items. We currently have an inventory to get ready for however we're going to use those particular items, but There will be a dollar amount in the proposed budget for 2021 that will allow us to continue to buy those PPE and related items as needed into the 2021 school year. And with that, I'll take any questions if you have any.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Harrell. Brian, and I don't know, maybe you can help me with this. In our last couple of town hall teacher discussions or teacher town hall meetings that we participated in, some of the concerns that came from the teachers specifically were the teachers that were in the Nellie Reddicks, right? Let's just use them as an example. They were asking if there would be a potential or an opportunity for us to look at buying scrubs or some kind of temporary clothing protection for them because they are dealing with a special population of students, and so they needed that extra protection or protection. Would some of that future purchases, would that be included in this? Or could we consider that if it's not already?
Yes, we're researching that now, and that would be included in future purchases.
Okay, okay, yeah. And I know that a lot of them, or in some of the discussions here again as well, the preference was for the face mask as well, for the plastic face mask. You know, I think depending on what people choose or accept or can work with, you know, but I did hear some of that was the preference would be some of the face mask covering. So.
Yes, sir.
Right.
We've got enough of those to start the school year, but it will, as Dr. Barajas indicated, require continual purchase.
Yeah, but those were also cleanable. I mean, the ones with the face shield, they could be cleaned though, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I think it'd be a worthy investment for that, at least in my mind. Thank you. Appreciate it, Dr. Hall. Thank you, Dr. Woods and Renee.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Ms. Chumbley?
I had a question. So, Renee, can you tell us, and I apologize, I had to step out for just a minute, kind of timeline on when these purchases were made, and going forward, when you're reporting this, if you can give us an idea of when the expenditures are being made. You know, I know that there was a lot of rush and push from March until now, but getting them from March and now we're getting them in July. And I know in speaking with Dr. Woods that the thought is that with the resolution that grants the authorization of these purchases, that we'll start being notified, you know, every 30 days of what these purchases are so that we know what authorizations are being made underneath that resolution that we've approved. But can you give us an idea of, you know, like when these purchases were made? So we know like the LMS was just made 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You know, it's 2.3 million. So was that just recently? I mean, how does this spread across from March until now?
Well, the initial purchases for the MiFi devices and the connectivity that was needed for our students, that was early on, certainly before the end of March. But the rest of it was really spread between the middle of March all the way to the end of June. That's essentially when these expenditures cover. In trying to look at, you know, if you saw big pockets of expenditures, other than a few large purchases, for instance, there was a $200,000 purchase of PPE and related items. There was another $100,000 purchase of instructional materials. Removing those items, you kind of see it just a natural flow throughout March, April, May, and June. Certainly on a go-forward basis, because we are tracking all of these expenditures with a certain object code called COVID, again, in the event that there is going to be funding that heretofore hasn't been made available to us for any kind of reimbursement, other than the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which that application will be open, I believe, sometime later this month. We can certainly do that and provide that to Dr. Wood so he can share that with his board regarding the expenditures on a monthly basis or whatever it needs to be.
Well, the authorization actually says that we've given the superintendent the authorization anything 50,000 and above. And so I certainly don't want you to have to send us a spreadsheet with 15,000 here or 40,000 or 60,000 there. But I do want to know what has been spent within the authorization that the board has allocated in relation to Dr. Woods. And I'm not sure if all of those are going to be tagged COVID or not, because there are other expenditures that the district is looking at, or I'm sure will need to as an operating district, that may fall over that 50,000 limit, that just will fall at a time when Brian feels that a purchase needs to be made. So not just those that are COVID. If there's any purchases that are done through the authorization of the resolution that we have, I would like to have the board be made aware of that.
I can certainly have that prepared and given to Dr. Woods.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I want to take that up because that's a good point. The only so far, and unless Wes or Renee corrects me, the only things that have been purchased under that authorization are directly COVID related. Everything else is coming to the board in the board's monthly meeting, as is our normal operating procedure.
And I can't disagree with that comment from Dr. Woods, because I think that in fact, what we have been looking at as far as coming through, the question is asked, oh, this falls under that COVID-related item, and also the authority granted to the superintendent by the board. But if there is something, we'll certainly make Dr. Woods aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we just need to, just so that we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Thanks. Our Mr. Blunt.
Yeah, I was just going to add, just based on something that we're going to talk about later from an advocacy and other standpoint, it would be good for us to have that information on those expenditures, COVID-19 related, without a doubt, especially as we move forward. But I was going to suggest maybe that's something that, I hate to add on things, but the Finance Committee, that may be an appropriate forum if there's any questions or anything else along those lines. And that's all I had.
Yeah, Mr. Blunt, we're tracking the expenditures literally to the penny. So we'll have that available anytime anybody needs it for any reason.
All righty, Ms. Reed.
I had a question about the things that we have that we're putting in the campuses, on the campuses, like in the hallways. Are there those kind of hand washing places that we have purchased that are standalone to do hand washing, so they don't all have to go in the bathroom?
We're actually trying to satisfy that requirement with hand sanitizer, Ms. Reed, rather than run water in the hallway.
Well, I mean, even the church has them out in front on the sidewalk, so I don't know that you have to have water hook up to them. There's just water inside the individual thing, so, or something in it. It may just be soap. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to ask staff that are, that's a little, I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay, well, I would think that it would make it a lot easier than having to have, the hand sanitizers, I understand, do not work as well as actual soap. So something to think about. Thank you.
All right, I'm seeing if there are any other hands. All right, Ms. Chumbley. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Ms. Chumbley and then Mr. Lopez.
Well, let Gerald speak. Let Gerald speak first. Carol, I'd forgotten I had a second question.
Okay, Mr. Lopez.
Go ahead, Melissa, because mine was just going to be a recommend for approval. So you go ahead and finish.
Oh, okay, thank you. So one of the other things within the authorization from a cost standpoint is construction, our renovations on facilities. And so, Brian, you had made a comment that we have over the last few weeks been putting up plexiglass shielding. And so if that would be another thing that I would appreciate if you could keep the board updated on within that authorization, what type of renovations. I was surprised by that. And it may have been that you shared it in another venue, and I apologize if you did, but I didn't know and still don't really quite understand where exactly we're doing renovations with plexiglass. And I had been asked that and wasn't able to answer. And so if you could just, keep us up to date on that piece, because that's one of the other policies that are within that resolution.
Yeah, I don't I don't know that I would call that renovation as I would just addition of plexiglass, but that's certainly a COVID-related expense. What I can do is ask maintenance staff to kind of describe what those installations look like, and I can just tell you off the top of my head, reception area is clearly one of them. The cafeteria lines where students are going through the lines right when they come to the cashier would be another example. But we can get a more comprehensive list.
Okay, that would really be helpful if we could get that and just know where, because I've been looking at all these different pictures of different countries and what they're, kind of what they're putting up as safety guards around their students. And so I thought, well, that would be a good part of that discussion then, if we kind of know where we're headed with what you're putting up as safety areas in our schools right now. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion before Mr. Lopez?
No, I was just gonna, if there's no other questions, I was just gonna move that we approve.
All right, Mr. Lopez, you've made a motion to approve the COVID-19 purchases. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Medina seconded that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Reed. We'll take a roll call vote.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Blunt,
Aye.
Ms. Chumbley,
Hi, Carol, just real quick, Leanne, I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm having problems with muting and unmuting on this. So I don't know, is that something, should I get out and try to come back in?
I think Katie was too, Melissa.
I think so.
I also had a problem with the video, so.
Yeah, I did too. Mine was stuck at stop. So, okay, anyway, yes, aye, Carol.
All right, thanks. Mr. Lopez,
Aye.
Mr. Medina,
Aye.
Ms. Freeman,
Aye.
Cheryl Harrell, aye. The ayes have it. So the COVID-19 purchases have been approved, and we will now move to item 16, Superintendent, consideration and possible action regarding COVID-19 emergency district closure, et cetera. Dr. Woods.
Thanks, Dr. Harrell. I'm going to actually pull this item and move it to our regular board meeting this month. I need to spend some time with the legal team reviewing this. So at this time, I would request to pull that item. However, what I will say for the board is that we've got a number of people who are signed up to speak under this item. And so that's a discussion obviously for the board, whether that happens here or that goes to the last item tonight. But there are a number of folks signed up to speak to this particular item.
So I think because we have people here to speak and they probably prepared something, I'm leaning towards allowing the citizens to be heard that are connected to item 16A to go on. What are the wishes of the rest of the board, or is there anyone who doesn't wish that?
Carol, I'm okay with listening to them.
Okay.
We just need to make sure that they're actually in relation to this agenda item.
Sure.
Carol, with what I'm just thinking of the emails and calls that we've gotten, I'm not quite sure that this is the agenda item that they were applied to.
So Dr. Woods, good point. So Dr. Woods, can you kind of elaborate on perhaps the next two? So that would help with where the citizens to be heard could actually be matched. Because the second one is Advocacy Resolution.
Sure. So that's a result of a conversation in the board's most recent meeting about wanting to get together on some key points to advocate at the state and perhaps federal level with regard to, we've talked about flexibility, we've talked about funding. So that was the notion of that item and a discussion around that, so that then if the board desired that staff could craft a resolution or a letter or whatever that might look like, that's what's anticipated in that agenda item.
Okay, and then one more time, just a real brief summary about 16A. What was that going to be?
Oh, I'm sorry. That item is a resolution that grants outside of policy because of the COVID crisis, certain authority to me to include purchasing, as was just discussed in the last item under business, to include leave for staff and compensation. And so that's that item. And again, that will come back to the board. I do not anticipate that that's what folks were really signed up to speak to, frankly.
Okay, thanks. So if I was a citizen to be heard, and my message was about purchasing items, that would fit with 16A, but if it was more about things to advocate for, it would be B.
I think that's a safe statement.
Okay. All right, I'll give just a minute. And we had a couple folks from earlier that said they wanted to come back to this. I believe Ms. Torres and Mr. Antuna or Ms. Caperton. Okay, all right. Who do we have perhaps for item A?
First one I see signed up is Kristen Gunter.
Hey, Carol, I apologize. Can I make a brief statement before we go to the citizens on this one? Just to add a little bit more to Dr. Wood's statement.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. I apologize.
Yeah, and what I really want to say, because I think it'll relate to what some of our citizens are going to come up and ask or talk about too, is again, like Dr. Woods has stated, our primary purpose here is really from a board of trustees standpoint, in the sense that we've known our superintendents, our teacher organizations and community and others have really been advocating. Trustees have been through our Tech Association School Board and other means, but what we really haven't done is really communicated with our various groups that we have as trustees, and both some of our area regional associations, such as our Bexar County School Board Coalition, which is our San Antonio area districts, as well as some of the other regional associations and some of the other organizations like the Mexican American School Board Association, et cetera. So we've all been communicating this last week or so, and thought that we need to, one, really push advocate to the governor on those principles of, and that we all agree on as trustees, from at least the ones I've communicated with. I think our board has too, emphasizing that flexibility to have these choices, really, whether we call it local control and other things, but that's really a basic governance that we really want to have that for our different districts, especially with the challenges that we're facing now. Ensuring that the funding is really there to be supporting, because we're the ones who have to approve the budget. So we want to make that statement as trustees. Let us work with our districts and to be able to provide that, et cetera. And one of our trustees actually sent something I thought was pretty creative, sent to me earlier, as also think about the COVID-19 infrastructure, and make sure that we had funding and everything in place to be able to support that also as we do that. So, the Bexar County trustees are definitely want to go forward and send something. And we thought it would be great if each of our individual districts discuss it also. And that's why we have the conversation before us, to see if we want to do something as a board of trustee and our responsibilities from a governance sense. And so I just wanted to add that part of it. Thank you, Carol.
Okay, thanks. And that was relating to item B. So I appreciate that a whole lot, Mr. Blunt. So we still have Ms. Gunter on item A. Ms. Gunter?
So after y'all have explained it a little more, mine is probably more under B, advocacy, because it's more concerning safety and if the district is granted the flexibility, kind of my take on that. So would you like me to wait for item B or go ahead and speak now?
So I'm going to just kind of look at the board in my head for just a minute. I'm thinking, because they're both under superintendent, if it's okay with the board, if you'll just say which one you're with, A or B, and that, I think that'll suffice. If there's any opposition to that suggestion, will you?
Item A been pulled?
It has been pulled, but it was on there. So.
No, but if we're not doing anything with it, we don't need any people to talk on that one.
Well, and I think for the most part, people had signed up for, now that they understand more, item B. So, all right, let's go ahead. Ms. Gunter, go ahead and speak, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a high school teacher and I'm about to enter my 12th year of teaching. I am honestly terrified to get back in the classroom right now. I teach because I love the kids. I love my school. I love my job. I love what I do. I love to see their eyes light up when they make a connection. I love to watch them grow from a timid freshman into a confident senior. I became a teacher to build these relationships. But way too often, too much is asked of teachers, and teachers give in because we're in this for the kids, and so we should sacrifice. So buy supplies for my classroom, okay, I love my students. Work hours beyond what I'm compensated for, okay, I love my students. Take a bullet for my students in the event of an active shooter, I love my students, but my 3-year-old needs his mommy, but I love my students. Go to teach in a dangerous, preventable environment and risk lives because we have to be back in school, I can't do that. We know this virus is rampant in the community. Over 500 cases are added each day. Hospital staff beds are reaching their limits. Deaths continue to climb. We have a mask mandate. Bars are closed. Restaurants have been scaled back on capacity. We get emergency alert texts to stay home, but yet it's somehow safe to start school. This virus has been studied in our country for only about 6 months. Scientists are still learning new things about the virus. The reason why it seems like information is constantly changing is because it is. We know this virus is deadly. We know that the people who recover have organ damage that may be permanent. We have very little data on how the virus affects children because children aren't extensively tested. Not knowing enough about how the virus affects children is not the same as a virus not affecting children. Originally, the AAP said that school should open because it does more harm than good right now for children to be out of school. They have since backed off that statement, saying that schools should not open in areas where COVID is, or should open in areas only where COVID is under control. That's not Texas or San Antonio. With all the safety protocols in place, how will quality in-person learning happen? What will my science classroom look like if we go back in person? No labs, no collaborative group work. All the benefits of being in a regular classroom will be non-existent. The only things that they will get is an increased risk of coming in contact with the virus. Will all those safety protocols even be enough? Will mass distance and hand sanitizer be enough to hide from a virus while we sit in the same room circulating the same air all day? Professional sports with all their money and resources can't keep this virus out of their bubble. This virus will be in our schools. Widespread illness is only a matter of time. Inevitably, school will go back to distance learning, so we can either start that way, taking advantage of the weeks of distance learning that the state has said we could have, or because too many teachers are sick or dead. I know the reasons for school starting up again in person, but you can recover falling behind in academics. You can't recover a life. I agree that students learn best in person under normal circumstances, but this is a pandemic surging in our community. I know you've been fighting for flexibility at the local level, and I urge you to keep fighting. I will as well. San Antonio Public Schools can't safely open in person right now, so keep fighting TEA and Texas government to make the right choice. Please take advantage of this distance learning that we can all start off as. It could buy us enough time to save lives. Thank you.
Catherine Walker.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Ms. Gunter. We appreciate you. Ms. Walker?
I am also speaking for B. Good evening, Dr. Woods and board members. My name is Catherine Walker, and I'm an 8th grader at Garcia Middle School and the daughter of a Northside teacher. The coronavirus is spreading rapidly in Texas. By opening our schools, we are risking the safety of our students and staff. Yesterday in San Antonio, there were 565 new cases of COVID-19 and 11 new deaths. I'm concerned about my teachers' safety if we allow students to come back to school in August. Reports have shown that COVID-19 is not much of a problem for kids in kindergarten through 5th grade, but is a problem for kids and teens in 6th through 12th grade. 84 people who attended a Missouri camp have tested positive for COVID-19, even though they were wearing face masks and staying in small groups. The campers were kindergartners through 12th graders. While sleepaway camp and public schools are very different, we can use this as an example of what might happen to our students and staff who are put together in classrooms where social distancing is difficult. While younger students can't catch the disease as easily, it can still linger on things they have touched for up to 48 hours. This is a problem because even if they do not get sick themselves, they can pass COVID-19 onto teachers, staff members, and their families. I want to go back to school. I miss my friends. I miss singing in the choir, and I miss working in a classroom with my teachers. But seeing my classmates, my bus driver, my teachers, or my family members get sick will impact me more than not being able to be in a building. In late April, 63 of New York City's teachers died from COVID-19 because they did not close schools fast enough. This brought heartbreak to many people, including the students who love their teachers. Please do not allow students to return to school until there are no more new cases of COVID-19 in San Antonio. Thank you very much for your time.
Catherine, thank you very much. You stated that very eloquently.
Thank you.
Melina Espiritu.
Mrs. Spiritu.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm also talking on B. I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification on that. Good evening, Dr. Woods, members of the board. I appreciate you allowing me to speak this evening. As you know, teachers, staff, parents, and students are terrified of COVID-19 and the implications it will have on the health and the lives of our Northside ISD community. We are also very aware of the predicament that the state and the federal government have put on our local school districts in. We do stand with you and continue to contact the governor, TEA Mike Morath, and even our local officials. As the COVID numbers continue to climb and we see more deaths each day, we ask you to reconsider the plan of opening our schools for face-to-face instruction. TEA COVID-19 guidelines say that during the first 3 weeks of school, to facilitate an effective back-to-school transition process, school systems may temporarily limit access to on-campus instructions. Other districts are holding off reopening dates until after Labor Day. We could allow for virtual learning for the first 3 weeks of school, and this plan provides the county some time to see if there is a decrease in COVID cases. Yesterday, during the city COVID-19 updates, Judge Nelson Wolf even referred to this option as something he was going to suggest to the area superintendents. The San Antonio Coalition for Reopening Schools is asking that our local officials and TEA hold off on opening in-person instruction at our schools for at least 9 weeks or until the COVID cases in our city begin to decline. CDC states that schools should be prepared for COVID-19 outbreaks in their local communities. With our hospitals nearing capacity and the numbers in our community soaring, San Antonio is simply not ready for an outbreak in our schools. We can't allow students and educators to die because we are being forced to begin in-person instruction before we are truly ready. During your address to the staff last week, Dr. Woods, I heard you mention a leave bank as a way to deal with the 14-day quarantine and unpaid sick days that we would be required to take if we come in direct contact with a COVID-positive student or staff member. A leave bank means that teachers are taking care of teachers and does not mean that the district is taking care of us at all. If we are required to go back to in-person instruction, then the district needs to support us and take care of us. If a teacher is docked for 4 days, that's approximately $800 to $1,000 that would be docked from our pay. That is a teacher's mortgage. We would run the risk of losing our homes because we are being forced to be in-person instruction. How can this be allowed? Please take care of us and give us the paid days we would need when we get exposed to COVID at school. Finally, my own children attend school in Northside, but they will be attending in-person instruction this year. They are frightened and worried about me going back to in-person school. They are asking why and scared about the possibility of me getting COVID and bringing it home because I have to go to school for in-person instruction. I don't even know what to tell them to make them feel better. I believe in telling kids the truth, and the honest truth is that we are all in danger if we go back to face-to-face instruction. What will you tell the first teachers' families when they die of COVID because they contacted at school? Will you tell the first family of the first child that dies of COVID because they were on campus? That is an impossible task, and I truly hope that you, Dr. Woods, and our board does not find themselves in this position. But this is a likelihood, and we can't have the lives of our kids in our hands without fighting to keep them safe. Please advocate for us. And please make good decisions with human life and health in the forefront. Our lives literally depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Espiritu. Appreciate you.
Billy Solis.
Okay, Mr. Solis.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Billy Solis. I am a Northside ISD health science teacher and a member of Northside AFT. My credentials include a Department of State Health Services licensed paramedic with a BS in Emergency Health Sciences from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio, class of 2016, magna cum laude. I am a Texas Department of State Health Services certified EMS instructor and a National Association of EMS Educators instructor, and I serve as the infection control officer for the NISD EMT programs. I would like to voice my concerns regarding teacher safety during the upcoming school year. I want to be clear that I believe distance learning should take place, that distance learning should take place this year, not in-person classes. However, if teachers must return to what I believe is an unsafe and hazardous work environment, I urge you to implement the following guidelines to at least provide the bare minimum degree of risk mitigation possible. In a recent questionnaire to teachers, a possible practice of only requiring masks to be worn during passing periods was mentioned. This is unacceptable. Masks must be worn properly at all times while on campus, and especially while in the classroom. Research has been out since March that showed coronavirus can be spread more than 20 feet in fine aerosolized droplets, and is finally being widely accepted by the medical community. To social distance 6 feet without a mask does not provide adequate mitigation. Science has proven that a comprehensive protocol that consists of wearing a mask properly, maintaining appropriate distance, regular hand hygiene, and disease transmission education are collectively effective in limiting the transmission of communicable respiratory disease. All these actions are required to minimize the spread of coronavirus, not just parts here and there. Masks and social distancing are not exclusive to one another. They collectively enhance the effectiveness of minimizing respiratory disease transmission. It is illogical to consider any plan that does not begin with mandatory mask and social distancing. There needs to be a zero tolerance policy that masks must be worn properly, covering nose and mouth by all people while on any NISD campus, as well as adequate social distancing. Having one without the other is ineffective. There was a mention of enhanced cleaning. I do not know what the district is referring to, but this policy must allow for adequate amount of time to clean desks, chairs, doorknobs, etc. in between classes in order to create the least dangerous environment as possible. A one-time deep cleaning at the end of the day has little positive impact after the first class of students has left the classroom the next morning. If any of you are thinking that these are not realistic measures, and you must concede that we cannot realistically provide a safe environment for teachers to work in moving forward with in-person classes, would be without due regard to teacher health and safety by sending us into such an environment this school year. Like every teacher, I prefer in-person instruction, but not at the cost of the safety of teachers and our families. I apologize for this direct, but 3 minutes is not much time. Thank you very much for hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. We really do appreciate you.
Nicholas Curtis.
Okay, Mr. Curtis.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. As a husband of an educator in the Northside School District, as well as a taxpayer into the same school district, I just wanted to share some basic commonsensical points to the reopening of schools as scheduled. The state is acting extremely pretentious and downright dangerous to pretend that our schools are good to go and will open as planned for the fall semester, when our schools went to online learning just a few short months ago with an infection rate much lower than it is now. Not to mention many states like California saying they will not reopen for at least 6 months and go straight to distance learning. The state has no testing protocol in place, no real plan to protect children as well as employees and their families, who all can easily spread this disease to loved ones, many of which are considered high risk for death if they contract COVID-19. And I say no real plan because the plan they have is not transparent and more than likely lackadaisical at best. Not to mention, they want teachers to quarantine for 14 days with the possibility of no pay if they are exposed to the virus, which they will be. How unfair is this to ask these brave men and women who are putting their lives on the line for education? I ask the state, as well as this board, to humble themselves to this virus and make smart, sound decisions according to the science and the facts, and not politicize this pandemic once again, which would kill thousands more because we chose to ignore the facts. Look what happened back in May when the state opened up bars and restaurants too early. Just imagine schools. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Farron Gustafson.
Welcome, Mr. Gustafson.
Sorry, I'm having a little difficulty unmuting him. So I'm going to have to promote him to a panelist temporarily to speak. And then when he's done, I'll put him back as an attendee.
Okay, thank you.
He should be available to unmute now.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll also be speaking to item B. Dr. Woods and esteemed members of the board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I appreciate the tireless effort that each of you has put in all year, especially over the last few months. I know that figuring out details of reopening our schools is a very difficult task, and that no matter what decisions are made, there will be those that will be vocally displeased. For this, I do not envy you, but I certainly appreciate you. I would like to use the rest of my time to do what I do best as a theater teacher and tell you a story. I am a proud product of Northside schools. I was a Thornton Texan, a Rudder Ranger, and finally a Clark Cougar. I met my husband my sophomore year, and we began dating the night that we graduated high school. We've now been married for more than 12 years, and we have 2 children together. You might say that my family exists because of Northside. When I finally figured out my vocation and completed my degree, I knew that Northside was my home. This is the only district that I have ever wanted to teach in. I had planned to take a year off between graduation and the beginning of my career to stay home with my daughter. When I found Northside was highly in discipline, those plans changed. I jumped at the chance to give back to the district that has given me so much, and I've been proudly teaching here for the last 4 years. Dr. Woods, you were one of my administrators at Clark. I vividly recall your voice over the intercoms, guiding the student body through our days. Until this calm, you reassured us and you guided us. Looking back, I realize now that you and your coworkers must have been experiencing a similar degree of fear and uncertainty that my coworkers and I are now facing. The unknown is once again staring us in the face, and I find myself looking to you again for guidance and strength. My daughter completed her kindergarten year through virtual learning. Teaching kindergarten and middle school simultaneously was difficult, but we made it work because it is what needed to be done. Despite numerous precautions, my son's daycare has already had at least 3 positive COVID cases in their building. I want to return to campus to be with my students, but I cannot send my asthmatic children back out into this crisis. And in order to keep my children safe, I need to be able to teach remotely from my home. Dr. Woods, I've trusted you since I was 14 years old, and I come to you now as a 33-year-old wife, mother, and educator, and I am asking for help. Please help me keep my family safe in these unknown times. Please help me and countless teachers just like me to keep our children, our families, and our students safe. Working from home would allow me to continue the education of both my students and my children. Teachers just like me have been placed in a predicament to choose between families and students, and this is heartbreaking. Please do not ask us to choose between our families and the careers that we so desperately love. Please grant us the opportunity to work remotely during these unstable times so that we can return to our classroom when the worst truly has passed. Thank you for your dedication and your time this evening and the important work that you continue to do.
It's good to see you.
You as well, sir.
Vanessa Turner.
Hello there, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Good afternoon, Dr. Woods and esteemed members of the board. My name is Vanessa Turner, and I'm entering my 4th year as a Northside educator. I will preface the letter I've written by saying that I am thankful for your hard work and continued efforts in supporting our Northside community, and I am proud to be a part of this district. There is no one-size-fits-all in this matter, and the risk of COVID cannot be eliminated in its entirety. But we must ask ourselves, how much risk are we willing to take when it comes to the lives of our children, educators, and community? TEA's guidelines left me with more troubling questions than answers. They acknowledge that a large population of children are asymptomatic, making it difficult to fully grasp the measure of spread, meaning that upon the first day of school, students will be returning already infected with COVID. Presuming these superficial guidelines are efficacious, then there is some hope that we can minimize the spread of virus. The truth is there is no guarantee, and we will ultimately experience widespread school closures within the first 3 weeks of our return. The COVID-19 planning considerations guidance states, physical distancing is fundamental to lowering the risk of spread with classrooms of roughly 30 students. We know this is not feasible, and there is simply not enough space to accommodate. So I wonder what limitations will be placed on classroom size. When social distancing isn't feasible, we are to mitigate by wearing coverings. How do we address the parent who refuses to allow their child to wear a mask? How do we address the student with special needs? How will we address non-compliance by students, parents, and faculty alike? I also have grave concerns surrounding sanitation. How many custodial hires do we have planned for? What allotment for sanitation budget? In the previous school year, we endured 3 lockdowns in less than a month due to nearby incidents, bringing me to question safety and security within our schools. In the midst of a pandemic, how do you propose we safeguard children in the event of a lockdown or drill? Will students use badges upon entry? Will all points of entry be monitored throughout the entire school day? What about restrooms? Will we monitor them throughout the day, similar to testing procedures, to ensure adherence and safety measures? My letter only scratches the surface of the complexity in reopening our schools. We have 4 short weeks to decipher and a great deal to consider before making these careful decisions that will ultimately keep us Northside strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. We appreciate you as well. Thank you.
Shelley Potter.
Ms. Potter, welcome. Ms. Leanne, are you going to have to make her a panelist as well?
No, ma'am. She has the ability to unmute her mic if she's on.
Okay.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Woods. My name is Shelley Potter, and I'm the mother of a 24-year-old daughter who attended Northside schools and graduated from John Marshall. I'm also a former first grade teacher and an over 35-year resident and taxpayer of Northside ISD. I'm speaking tonight about advocacy related to school reopening. There should be one overriding question as you consider making decisions about reopening. Is it safe? That's it, period. How many dead children is an acceptable number? How many dead staff is an acceptable number? I believe that for you, as for me, that number is 0. There should be no acceptable number of children or staff sacrificed in the name of reopening schools. I understand that the state is trying to bully districts into reopening by threatening to not fund districts who do not offer in-person schooling. Please do not be bullied. If the majority of school boards, superintendents, parents, teachers, and school employees stand together, we will prevail. In addition to my concerns about the safety of students and staff, I'm also concerned about the reopening of schools, increasing the spread of the virus within our community. We have to all work together to contain the spread. Opening schools to in-person instruction will only increase the spread. We must get the outbreak in San Antonio under control. And the current situation is worse than it was when the school districts closed down in-person instruction in the spring. There will be an appropriate and safe time to come back, but that time is not now, and it will likely not be that time for at least the first 9 weeks of school or longer. In their latest statement, the American Academy of Pediatrics has warned that reopening plans should be scrapped if the outbreak becomes too severe. They stated, quote, schools in areas with high levels of COVID-19 community spread should not be compelled to reopen against the judgment of local experts. Many of us are writing and calling state officials regularly and will continue to do so. I urge you to pass a resolution and work together with other districts to fight for local districts to have the power to make the decisions regarding school reopening based on the guidance of local public health experts. Let the community know that you will not be a party to spreading the virus in San Antonio. And please send a message to Commissioner Morath and Governor Abbott that there will be no sacrificial lambs in Northside ISD, that you will not allow it. Thank you for your attention and all that you are doing on behalf of our students in our community during these trying times.
Thank you, Ms. Potter.
Marcos Antuña, I think that this gentleman moved here from an earlier slot.
Yes, Dr. Woods, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hall, Dr. Woods, and esteemed members of the board. As an adult ESL educator and career navigator in Northside, as well as a resident and voter in Mrs. Freeman's district, I have many students who are themselves the parents of children attending our schools. They are aware of how taxing and involved education can already be during normal circumstances and are almost uniformly distressed by the idea of their children attending in-person instruction as part of what they feel is an ill-conceived social experiment which could have dire consequences. The details of an in-person education are currently too vague and speculative for the community, and no one wants their loved ones to be the victim of any mistakes in planning. Online remote education standards have improved starkly in the past several months, and an online remote education, given the sharp rise in COVID-19 infection rates in San Antonio, is the only appropriate action for the district to take at this juncture. Many members of our Northside community, whether teacher, parent, or student, hope that the board will dedicate itself wholly to distributing technology to students in need, thereby making the safe option of online remote education more feasible. I am sure you will be hearing from many members of our NISD family today. I appreciate your hard work and attention to these urgent issues, and thank you for all that you do for Northside ISD staff, students, and families.
Thank you. We appreciate yours as well.
Lori Cervantes.
Okay.
Lori Cervantes isn't signed in under her name, so if she is on and needs to speak, if she could use the raise hand gesture so we can identify her, that would be very helpful.
Okay, Ms. Cervantes, can you raise your hand, please? Ms. Cervantes?
Dr.
Leanne,
Hall.
I hear some background talking though. All right, can we go ahead and come back?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, I'll circle Ms. Cervantes' name, okay?
Jennifer Aguilar.
Okay, Ms. Aguilar.
Like before, I'm going to have to promote Ms. Aguilar to a panelist to speak.
Okie dokie. Okay, welcome, Ms. Aguilar. You're on mute.
Hello. Can
Ready?
everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. First off, just thank you, Dr. Woods and members of the board for meeting with us today. I'm a first grade teacher at an ESL campus. I believe that we all have one goal in mind, and that is to educate students to the best of our ability. And with that said, uncertainty weighs heavily on me, both as a teacher and especially as a Northside parent myself. I believe that while teachers desperately want to get back to live teaching and reaching students directly, we are feeling the strain of not knowing how or even if we're going to be protected physically, mentally, and financially if we're sent back into school buildings. Teachers are always willing to carry out our workloads, and we're often reluctant to ask for help or speak up regarding our concerns. But now more than ever, we need to be heard. We need to know that we will be able to take the time needed to protect our families when, not if, we are exposed to COVID-19. If we open in person, sooner than absolutely necessary. If we're forced to teach on campus and sacrifice ourselves and our families in an experimental way, we need to know that safety procedures will be enforced and backed by the money and the manpower it takes to truly keep our schools safe and sanitized. We need clear answers as we walk into a binding contract as loyal employees. While I, as most teachers, would take a bullet for my students, I can't excuse being forced to walk into what we know is an unsafe environment and force my own children to do the same. Thank you.
Gabrielle Gutierrez.
Ms. Gutierrez, welcome. Okay, Ms. Gutierrez, one more time. All right, we'll go ahead and circle her name, see if she can, if we can get her back. Unless, Ms. Kidd, do you see her needing to be a panelist?
No, ma'am, I don't see her name at all.
Okay, all right. Dr. Woods?
Michelle Torres.
Okay. Ms. Torres, welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Woods and board. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Michelle Torres. I'm a fourth-year teacher in NISD, and I'm speaking as an educator who is concerned about returning for in-person instruction in the fall because my underlying health condition, per my doctor, puts me at higher risk of complications if I were to get the COVID-19 virus. I want to continue teaching for this district. You see, for me, teaching is not just a job. I believe it's my vocation. And I'd like to share about why I became an educator. Before teaching, I stayed at home to raise my 2 young children. During that time, I volunteered at my church teaching religious education, which I did for 10 years. In doing so, I fell in love with teaching and working with students. I was inspired by the dynamic relationship that resulted between teacher and student, for I believed I learned as much from them as they did from me. About this time, my oldest son started elementary school, and I got involved by volunteering as a board member of the PTA. I became committed to working with the school and doing my part to ensure a positive school culture and positive experiences for my son. In doing so, I became well aware of the impact and influence an educator can have on a child. I realized how important it was for students to have educators who were positive role models for them and who genuinely cared, not just about their education, but the well-being of the whole child. Education became my passion. I went back to school to get my Master's of Educational Leadership degree, and I did so graduating as a distinguished graduate with a 4.0 GPA. I was quickly hired at NISD as a middle school ELA teacher. My first year, I was nominated as First Year Teacher of the Year. Within my past 3 years of teaching, I've been asked to be a presenter at our district curriculum training sessions, which I did. I was one of 8 panelists selected by the MS ELA curriculum instruction team to speak at the New Teacher Academy this past year for new teachers. I was also selected by the CNI team to participate as a member of the Curriculum Planning Committee to review and revise curriculum for the upcoming academic year. In addition, I was asked by my school principal to be part of the leadership team for our campus. I view these all as great opportunities, and I'm humbled every time I'm considered for one of them. But my real accomplishments have taken place in working with students, and I believe I've been given these other opportunities because it's evident to my colleagues how much I care about the work I do and how far I'm willing to go to have a positive impact on my students' lives. At the start of distance learning, there was some concern regarding how we would go about this new learning model. Immediately, I saw it as an opportunity to connect students with real-world experiences. For my first assignment, students read an article about how these tough times could bring people together to improve the community. Students had a choice of writing a letter to a nursing home resident, creating artwork, or making a playlist of uplifting songs to share with others. I received some exceptional and thought-provoking work. I found it was possible to continue to deliver high-quality instruction that was meaningful and relevant to students, even in an online learning environment. From then on, I took every online learning course offered by the district to improve the online learning experience to engage my students, and I saw many successes. I was able to engage students, I was able to engage students who were previously difficult to engage in the traditional classroom setting. Students became more effective at communicating with me about their struggles and needs, and positive two-way communication with parents also improved. And believe me when I say I work just as much, if not more, as a distance learning teacher. I know the distance learning model is and can be successful with teachers like myself who are committed to upholding the standards of excellence Northside is known for. I want to continue working for this district, and I ask that you allow me and other teachers like me with underlying health conditions the option to work from home as distance learning teachers. I also ask for clearer guidelines on how to go about this process. Lastly, if for some reason you can't give us this option, I ask that you not penalize teachers in this situation who resign their contract due to health concerns past the 45-day notice period. Thank you for listening to my concerns tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Woods, Ms. Kidd said that Ms. Gutierrez is back on.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Okay. Hello, my name is Gabrielle Gutierrez. I am a O'Connor student. I'm currently going into 11th grade. And as of right now, I am completely okay with staying online, distance learning. If that means that everybody at school is safer, not just, students, like faculty and staff. With the current rise in cases, I feel unsafe going back to an environment where I don't know for sure that everybody will be following like PPE and social distancing and proper hand washing and other things. And I also don't feel comfortable putting my teachers' lives and my other students and bus drivers and custodians' lives and their families' lives at risk if that means that I get to sit in a classroom rather than stay at home and learn through virtually. I also am an online or an on-hands class and that I worked very hard to get into, but I am okay with sacrificing that if that means everybody will be safer and everybody will be healthier at home. I would like to see everybody staying at home, especially with how scary everything is right now and how often the cases are rising, especially the number of deaths. And just the fact that we have hospitals filling up like crazy, I just don't think it's safe for me and my other peers and staff and teachers to be confined in buildings all day for like 7 hours. And even with masks, even with hand sanitizer, I don't see students following that, and I don't see student or teachers implementing that all the way, even though it's the right thing to do. I just feel like everybody's human and everybody's not going to want to do it, or everybody's going to, complain about it. And I just feel like it's safer if we stay at home. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Well done. Appreciate it.
Riley Lippenholtz.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Woods and the members of the board. My name is Riley Lippenholtz, and I'm a rising senior at Brandeis and the daughter of a teacher. In an effort to support my mom, teachers, and staff, I've started a petition to open safely and protect our teachers, staff, and students. As of right now, my petition has over 5,000 supporters, and I emailed the 222-page list of supporters all over the U.S. to each of you earlier this afternoon. My goal is not to delay going back to school. Believe me, I want to go back to school more than anyone. I'm one of thousands of NISD students likely missing the majority of my senior year experiences. I'm involved in all kinds of extracurriculars and I love learning. I miss my friends, I miss my teachers, and I miss being able to do my extracurriculars such as robotics, but not at the expense of our peers, teachers, and their families. As the daughter of an NISD staff member and a teenager with several high-risk family members, having my mom go back to work scares me. As a student, I'm worried because I'm fully aware that some of my high school peers will refuse to wear a mask per CDC guidelines, especially for a full school day, and will take it off as soon as no one is looking. This doesn't even factor in students of younger grades. There's no way to keep a mask on an elementary schooler all day long. Transportation seems just as impossible. I personally drive to school or I'm driven by my mom, but that simply isn't possible for some families. In middle school, I rode the bus where we sat 3 to a seat, sometimes more, and it just isn't possible to keep students and the bus drivers safe. Food is just another obstacle. The cafeteria workers who make the food could be infected, and I can't even imagine having to wear a mask in a hot kitchen while cooking all day long. As it was last year, Brandeis didn't have enough custodians on a normal day, much less with the extra sanitation that Northside is trying to put in to schools. Classrooms that are set up to be socially distanced per CDC recommendation will only be able to contain a small number of students who will have to and likely won't wear masks all day long. Overall, you never know who's sick. I know that some of my peers' parents would send them to school anyway because being sick is not a good enough reason to miss class. I know that some parents won't do their due diligence and take their child's temperature every morning before school. Hospitals are nearing capacity, and opening schools is bound to cause another outbreak, expanding upon San Antonio's already growing cases and deaths. Like I said earlier, I'm heavily involved in robotics. In fact, I'm the team captain, and I've been doing robotics for 7 years. If there's one thing I've learned from robotics, it's to make a plan. When the game gets released, we analyze, strategize, and make a comprehensive plan. That plan always changes. We need flexibility as the season and school year progresses. I'm asking that you take advantage of the 3-week distance learning period given by TEA to buy time for a comprehensive, adaptable plan based on the situation at the time. My second request is that teachers be given the choice to work in person versus virtually to protect high-risk family members. Thank you for advocating for our community, and thank you for your time.
And Riley, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Great job.
Dr. Harrell, I think we've figured out how to get Lori Cervantes on, so if we can go back.
Great. Welcome.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all waiting for me and coming back for me.
Oh, we appreciate you.
Okay, I'm Lori, and I'm just a concerned community member. This morning, I read in an article by the Texas Tribune, which reported on the manner in which Texas hospitals are running out of drugs, beds, ventilators, and even staff. In some areas, ambulances were waiting up to 10 hours before even being able to transfer COVID-19 patients to overwhelmed hospitals. Yesterday, Ken's 5 shared a story on the refrigeration trucks that are now here in San Antonio to help organize the huge influx of dead San Antonians that we are currently seeing thanks to this very real pandemic. I'd like to know how the district intends to choose which teachers' lives matter less, therefore forcing certain teachers into the classroom in the middle of this pandemic. How is the district planning to pick individual teachers to sacrifice? We are living the actual proof of what happens when you begin opening up institutions too quickly while in the middle of a pandemic. Please don't become the next Governor Abbott, who now has the blood of numerous Texans on his hands. Senator Kamala Harris today shared a story in which 3 Arizona teachers shared a classroom for summer school. All 3 ended up with COVID-19 and one of them ended up dead. I'm also concerned on the issue of how parents have the option of whether to send their kids to school or not, yet we don't allow the educators to have that option, or at least it's not being put out there yet. How did we get to the place of parents being given the ability to choose, but teachers aren't even being asked what they want? Their lives are also important, along with the lives of their family members. Lastly, if we are willing to value profit and politics over human lives, it's better that we say this openly and honestly to the community. It's better to be transparent. There are other districts, for instance, Fort Bend Independent School District and Austin Independent School District, who will begin the academic year online. There are ways to keep teachers and students safe. How will the leaders in this district be remembered? Will we be remembered as one of the districts that cared? Or will we be remembered as the district who wanted to play politics while risking the lives of students and educators? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cervantes, and thanks for hanging in there with our system. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Star Macias.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hello. All right. Hello, Dr. Woods and members of the board. My name is Star Samaripas Macias, and I am going into my 3rd year of teaching at O'Connor High School. I want to start by saying that I want nothing more than to be back in my classroom, but I do not want to risk my students, fellow educators, custodians, bus drivers, and my own livelihood in order to do so. I thank you all for your work and understand that the reopening of our district is not an easy task and that you all have many critical decisions to make. But I am here to urge you as representatives of this district to advocate fiercely on our behalf to the local and state representatives and TEA to ensure that your NISD community stays safe and that you all make it clear to TEA that you all center human life over profit. Dr. Woods, in your webinar to NISD this past Thursday, you stated that you and the board have advocated to TEA for more flexibility. I thank you, but I ask if you can release what that statement looked like and further elaborate on what this flexibility means to us. Up until this point, there has been very little transparency as to what any of the plans may even possibly look like. I know there has been some town halls hosted by Dr. Woods with hand-selected teachers from each campus, but I believe that all those interested should be brought to the table, as we are all going to be affected by any decisions made. I ask that you take the following into consideration when you all do release the plan for reopening. While I'm pleased that my students get the choice of in-person or online learning, I ask that you extend the same opportunity to teachers to choose. Many teachers have or care for those with underlying health conditions, or like myself, do fall into both categories. However, even if teachers do not fit into those categories, I'm still advocating for an online option because, as we know with some research, that COVID can ravage the lives of even the most healthy. All lives should be valued from the very start. We should not be willing to gamble with the lives of any member of the NISD community. How devastating would it be if we open later realizing that it was a major mistake, then to retract only to have already lost one too many lives? I also ask that Dr. Woods and the board take advantage of the TEA guidelines that state that the first 3 weeks of school can limit on-campus instruction. Many districts in Texas are taking advantage of this and are choosing not to open up until Labor Day or after Labor Day. With conversation with other NISD teachers, the following concerns do tend to come up. Teachers cannot be expected to quarantine without being given paid sick leave. A leave bank is not appropriate, and teachers deserve better than that. There is money set aside with the CARES Act that NISD should advocate to receive in order to be reimbursed. My last concern is that I advocate that you all advocate to TEA and the state to waive both T-test evaluations and STAR testing. Surely that $90 million revenue from STAR testing could be reallocated into bettering distance learning or serving our students in the many ways that are going to be needed after coming through this period of trauma. Teachers need to be able to focus on their students' social, emotional needs once back in the classroom. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Ms. Messes. Appreciate it.
Alyssa Moreno.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Alyssa Moreno, and I've worked for the district for 15 years now. And I also have a daughter that attends a Northside school. By now, we all know that Mike Morath has deemed it safe to return to school. I'm not sure why we're taking his advice. I'm listening to the doctors, our mayor, and the county judge every daily briefing. They seem to give data that is the complete opposite of our city being safe. The data that I hear about San Antonio tells me loudly, do not congregate due to community transmission. In fact, the mayor said the week of June 18th, if you go somewhere and people are not wearing a mask, leave. Yet masks may not be required at school because it's safe. City officials say daily, do not be with anyone that is outside of your home. But Morath says it's safe to return to school. By throwing us back into the schools, we, the teachers, will ultimately hold the responsibility. Students will get sick. Students will die. Teachers and staff will get sick. Teachers and staff will die. We are talking about our lives, our family that never steps into the building. We're putting them in jeopardy as well. One life, if you were asked if you could save one life, would you do it? That's what it comes down to. It's not a time to just see what happens. And I ask all of you, show me the science, show me the data that it's safe to go back into the classroom. It's too risky. The district posted just a little over a week ago on Facebook how to keep families safe over 4th of July. Avoid groups larger than 10. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart. So which is it? Stay home or go to school with hundreds, if not thousands of people? As of this week, city leaders are talking again about placing restrictions as we did back in March. The reasons are a little different. Numbers are up, hospitals are reaching capacity. We have refrigerated trucks on standby to hold dead bodies. And as a matter of fact, I have an alert on my phone right now that says they are no longer on standby, that they are using them. Just as you all are planning out the school year without us, my family is planning ours as well. Families have to decide and make decisions not knowing anything about what the district is thinking. Plan A for us, prepare. Prepare to walk in that classroom. I have bought hand sanitizer, Lysol wipes that I will be using, seeing that my school has filled only 2 out of 5 custodian positions. Lysol spray, paper towels, soap, 100 disposable masks, 100 disposable gloves, a 3-pack of face shields, shoes that can be thrown into the washing machine daily, 4 pairs of scrubs, and an outdoor shower so I can disinfect myself before walking into the house. And we have no idea if this will be provided. Plan B, we have a travel trailer. We use it for family vacations throughout the year. Not this summer. We've listened to city leaders. We've stayed home. Plan B, I live 1.8 miles from my home in our travel trailer by myself, so I don't bring anything home to my family. In closing, I invite you, Dr. Woods, and the board members to join us teachers to experience the first day of school. I want you all to see the problems we will face that you all aren't even able to foresee. I want you all in any of our schools without a mask sitting in a classroom. And don't forget, stop at the door, get your temperature taken, fill out a questionnaire, grab some hand sanitizer, and don't worry, it's totally safe. Pray for us all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time as well. Thank you.
Andrew O'Hara.
Like before, I'm gonna have to promote him to panelist for him to be able to speak.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Woods and board members. I just want to thank you for advocating for the safety of teachers and school staff during this time, and I ask that you continue to advocate for our safety in the coming months. I just wrapped up my 10th year as an educator, and it was the most interesting year so far. The thing I miss most about the classroom is the personal interactions with my students and coworkers. And I think I just laugh and I smile, and I'm just excited about the vibrancy of a school building when I'm at the school building. However, I don't think those interactions are worth risking the safety of my students, my coworkers, or my family. On a more positive note, I did have many successes with students during the spring distance learning, and actually it's really neat how I was able to individualize my instruction even more than I normally am for some students. I commend the growth of a lot of my fellow teachers this spring. I saw a lot of my fellow staff members doing really innovative and neat stuff with their students that in PLCs we would talk about it, and it was kind of really inspiring to feed off of each other. And that's a pattern I would hope to continue this fall. I think with guidance from district staff, we could continue to grow in that in distance teaching to empower and support our students. And I think, with further guidance, we could do a lot more for students and for each other. And finally, on a personal note, my wife is a nurse at a local hospital, and we've had to drastically change our home life over the last 4 months. As the previous caller mentioned, we change in the garage. My wife especially leaves all her work stuff in the garage, sanitizes everything before entering the house. And I'm not, even at a hospital that has adequate PPE and hygiene materials, and with healthcare workers who are aware of all the safety restrictions, I'm not confident we could achieve that same level of safety in the school setting. So I ask that you please consider the safety of staff and students as we talk about plans for this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. We appreciate it. Take care.
Sherry Caperton.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome back.
Hi, thank you. Dr. Woods, Dr. Harrell, esteemed board members, first of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. I've been a Northside homeowner and taxpayer for 28 years, a Northside parent for 25 years with 3 more to go, a Northside high school teacher for 15 years. With that being said, with the state of our city at this time, I have serious concerns about the restrictions that have been placed on the schools with the in-school only and the distance learning requirements. Like you, I do not believe that this is the only answer. I have a son who just graduated high school last year. I have another son, my last one, who is going into his sophomore year at Taft High School next year, and he is adamant about returning to on-campus learning in August. Not only does he want to see his teachers and his friends, but he is dyslexic and he learns best when in a classroom where he can see interactions and have access to hands-on learning. This is something that is lost to him, as many other learners with learning disabilities, with distance learning. He is also in choir and was disappointed this past year by missing banquet, lock-in, and UIL during the spring. He was also disappointed this summer by not being able to engage with camps to be able to practice UIL for solo next year. While I respect his wishes to return to school and I will honor them, I also fear for his health. I know teenagers are reckless and will not always adhere to rules for safety. He will, but others may not. My biggest fear is that my son or myself will contract COVID by returning to school. I have type 2 diabetes and other health problems that put me at a higher risk for catching the disease. That being said, I'm a special education teacher and I have an obligation to my students with learning disabilities to provide hands-on learning that they can't get through distance learning. The same hands-on learning that my son needs in a classroom environment. However, with in-school environments runs the risk of exposure. One student can expose multiple teachers and students to the disease. The grade level needs to be a consideration in making decisions regarding how to handle safety protocols. Elementary schools have more control over student movement than secondary schools do. However, these are some questions that I present to the board. If someone at a school is diagnosed with COVID and self-quarantines are required, will the students be able to access distance learning without disruption in learning? And also, will the teachers be allowed to work at home through distance teaching so that they do not lose income or have to use their leave through no fault or choice of their own? Also, should a quarantine issue become so large that requires school closings, can we move to digital learning instead of closing schools in order and losing educational time or having more time added to the end of the school year? Thank you for your time, and I trust that you will make your decisions for the best of the district, as you always do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caperton.
Gary Ross.
Can you say it one more time, Mr. Woods?
Yes, Jerry Ross.
Appreciate it, Ross. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. It looks like my clock has been running for 30 seconds.
I know, we'll adjust it. I've got another one.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry if there's redundancy in what I have to say this evening, but it needs to be said, and I hope that it helps everyone with the advocacy. I'm the art specialist at Valley High and Passmore Elementary Schools. Thank you all for hearing me, and I'll try to be brief. I first want to say that you all are amazing, effective leaders. This is incredibly reassuring in this unsettling time. Strong leadership is what will get us through this, and I am privileged to serve with you all at the helm. As we consider here on Zoom reopening schools, I think of the meme I saw saying, if the meeting to discuss reopening schools takes place via Zoom for the safety of the participants, maybe we shouldn't be discussing reopening schools. I am here to highlight the ethical dilemma of reopening schools. On the one hand, we have students and parents who need us. We need them as well. We are an interdependent community. On the other hand, we have a raging pandemic that is threatening lives. Which of these problems will most determine our choices? We plan to reopen for the students and the parents. Some teachers are on board with this, many are not. If we think about our students, we see that many are hungry, many are in danger at home, many have special needs, and all will lose educational ground without school. But when we think about the pandemic, we see that it can, does, and will kill people. In a district the size of ours, a couple of mistakes among over 100,000 people will have serious and expensive consequences for some in our community. Whatever the state says, we also have an ethical responsibility. Utilitarian ethics tells us to do whatever will produce the greatest overall good results. So they would say it is clearly better for one person to die if it means others can be saved. But deontology is the view that the moral value of an action lies in the action itself, not just in its consequences, that if something is wrong, it's wrong, regardless of the good that comes from the action. I think we must realize that reopening is not just a practical question, but is a true ethical dilemma. Is the administration responsible for the deaths that will result from opening during a pandemic? Is the administration responsible for the suffering of students at home if schools remain closed a bit longer? These questions should not have easy answers, and they don't. Smarter people than I have spent long hours exploring such ethical scenarios. However, I believe our community can survive virtual learning for a year or even more. Children are resilient, and there are safer ways to educate them than by opening the schools now. For instance, teachers eager to return to teaching could volunteer as homebound teachers. It's much easier to avoid the virus in one-on-one settings than in groups. We can repair educational shortfalls, but we cannot bring back lives. And Dr. Woods, I vote for Canvas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Appreciate it.
Casey Thompson.
Casey's going to be promoted to panelist as well. So she should be able to unmute and speak.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, School Board and Boards. Tonight, I would like to speak on behalf of myself, my secondary colleagues, and I come to you tonight as an educator, a woman battling breast,
and I should say a proud mom of 2 Northside kiddos. While we are all navigating through the new reality of this global crisis, and as the board of a school district our size, we realize you are in a challenging position, but we also believe because of our size, we have
Casey, I lost you. I lost you at because of our size. Can you hear me?
Okay, Casey actually is on mute. There she goes. She went back on mute.
Casey?
There you go.
I'm having some difficulty that keeps going back and forth. I'm sorry.
No, Casey, if you don't mind, can you start over again too? Because it was a little bumpy in the beginning. Do you mind?
Yes, no, that's no problem. I will.
Thank you, dear.
Tonight, I would like to speak on behalf of myself and my secondary colleagues. I come to you tonight as an educator, a woman battling breast cancer, and a mom of 2 Northside kiddos. While we are all navigating through a new reality of this global crisis, and as the board of a school district our size, we realize you are in a challenging position. But we also believe because of our size, we have an opportunity and an obligation to be role models and advocate for the safety and health of our community, especially in our staff. While the current NISD requires students to be back in the classroom, as our educational city leaders, we believe NISD cannot meet these demands at this time and provide a safe environment for every student and every staff member. We ask that you not adhere to TEA's in-classroom requirements and continue to advocate for the safest option for all schools, staff, learning, since COVID numbers continue to climb. As a mentality that safety and education go hand in hand. We all learned on the path to becoming educators that there are some foundational principles that must be made for students to learn. Maslow's hierarchy of needs identifies physiological and safety needs as necessary for learning to occur. And in our current health crisis, it does not seem that schools can ensure that those needs are met when students are in the classroom. Schools can neither ensure the health and safety of students nor create a healthy learning environment for our children. For example, in a socially distanced classroom, students would have to maintain a 6-foot distance from each other, which means that any sort of collaboration or group work is impossible. However, in a distance learning environment, students can not only collaborate, but can work in groups, teams, and collaborate, especially with our new current technology options, such as Zoom Meets and Schoology. We also have to consider the daily trauma as we return. Students and staff all have to wear a mask hours a day and be around a lot of people
knowing it's possible and likely to get sick, even if following every guideline. This impairs student cognition and makes it difficult for educators to focus on teaching. It makes it more difficult for everyone to learn, to process, and to articulate their thinking. I would also like to express how committed and passionate my colleagues and I are as educators. We have been diligently working to be proactive. We have worked very hard to create a proposal for secondary classroom safety created by teachers for teachers. And earlier this afternoon, we submitted this suggestion to the board members and also Dr. Woods. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to listen. I believe we're all here for the same purpose, and I believe we must all ask a simple question. Can we truly provide a safe environment for all students and all staff? Thank you so much.
Aaron Salfidi.
Good evening, Dr. Woods and board members. I am a product of Northside and a middle school teacher going into my 15th year of teaching. We appreciate all the work you are doing to fight our state legislators to give us more flexibility to service our enormous district. I know that you have said since the beginning one of your priorities is that the safety and health of our students and staff. You value your own lives and safety by conducting this meeting virtually, and we all deserve to have that choice and safety measure in place. So it would make equal sense to begin school virtually, keeping everyone as safe as possible. Our hospitals are overwhelmed and refrigerator trucks are on standby. We should not be gathering in large numbers until we have, until we are able to get this virus under control or have the ability to properly treat those who contract it. While everyone doesn't die from this virus, many are hospitalized and have lasting permanent effects. When it is safer to return to school, which we all want under safe circumstances, social distancing is something that we have to have in place in our hallways, in our classrooms, and any place that students and staff will be. Everyone should wear a face mask and should not be allowed to remove them at all because regular conversations release particles in the classroom. We as teachers should be given reasonable ways to police this policy with clear consequences. There's no point in the rule if it cannot be enforced. Transparency about the number of positive cases at our campus is very important. I myself have a high-risk mother that lives in town. My dad passed away recently, so I am her only resource to help her when she needs it. If we have a high number of cases that we are exposed to, that would help me make an informed decision about whether or not I can see her. Flexibility on dress attire would also be appreciated. Wearing something like scrubs or jeans that can be easily removed outside of our homes and directly washed day after day, along with tennis shoes, would be more practical at this time. Teachers are going to be suffering from more anxiety and stress than ever before. We will worry about our students, our families, our colleagues, and ourselves. I ask you to please take this into consideration when making decisions about our lives. Thank you again for your time.
Brittany Glenn.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
Well,
Good
thanks.
evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and express our concerns. My name is Brittany Glenn, and I have been in the education field for several years. I'm a parent of two, one who is not of school age yet, and another who will be entering into 3rd grade. As a parent, I have a few questions that I would like to ask in order to see what safety precautions will be in place, not only for our students, but also our beloved staff and teachers. My first question, if a teacher tests positive, will they be quarantined for 14 days? If this happens, what kind of instruction can truly happen if this happens multiple times with multiple exposures? Also, will there be a way that the district will be able to find subs willing to enter a classroom knowing that their risk of contracting the virus is very high? My second question, will teachers be paid hazard pay? Will they be provided with proper protective equipment and supplies in order to maintain cleanliness in their classrooms? My third question, if it is safe to return to schools, why are we having this meeting virtually? I think other people have talked to that point as well. Also, is the district prepared for staff and teachers to resign and on a large scale basis? If so, what is the plans to A, hire teachers willing to come in. And my last question is, if the students do test positive and the other classmates are now exposed, will the district or school be willing to pay for these very expensive tests? Please understand that we know that these are some tough decisions ahead. I do want to say I appreciate your willingness to push back on some of the things that we have heard from TEA, from the governor. But I do ask that you reach out to some of the great educators and parents. We do have some really strong and passionate ideas, ways to get us around all of this, return safely, be able to do virtual learning, and we want to be able to be a part of that conversation. Please use us as a resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn. Appreciate it.
Dr. Harrell, that's the last person signed up to speak tonight.
Okay, so that is, we did 16. We have nothing in executive session. I'm trying to get my eyes back on. And so it looks like we're moving to.
Carol's.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blunt?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know we had the community speak for 16B. I thought we were going to also discuss whether or not this board wanted to send a resolution or have a resolution drafted from the board
I
to
apologize,
the
Mr.
governor.
Blunt. I'm sorry, I thought you spoke to that already. So we can look at that. Going back to Bobby's question, is there a resolution, an advocacy resolution of any shape and kind that we'd like to consider? And Bobby, if you want to repeat what you said earlier, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'll be quick. I know a lot of folks are on. Again, we are working one for the Bexar County School Board Coalition. Right. And we've talked that over not only with the districts in the San Antonio area, but also have talked to some others too. What we have found again, it is from a trustee's sake, that trustees are agreeing across the board that the concerns that we have and the items that we were really trying to think that really should be pushed to support the superintendent, our community, and those we've heard from tonight is first the making sure that we have the flexibility, and that comes from that beginning clause that you know that's in the guidance preparation guidance document, whereby it states that schools basically are required to be open, and we're saying that should not be the case. Let us decide that locally, what's going to be best for our situation that we're in, and this would apply across the state equally. The other major area that we tend to be agreement in has to do with the funding aspect, to make sure whatever approach we're taking that the full funding is provided. And the last area that the trustees, and I suggest we may include in our resolution, is to make sure we also have the adaptability and flexibility. So for example, I know we're talking about the 3 weeks time period. I think what we've talked about is don't even have a time period in there. Let that be a local decision again. If trustees or boards want to have a longer time period or have different options. So I thought we may want to, as a NISD school board, if we agree those principles or have our own, at least begin to say, hey, do we want to have a resolution, or what do we want to possibly say to the governor from our board of trustees to maintain our governor's responsibility?
Okay, so so this will be the first time that I've done a resolution. So help me with how a resolution goes from being a symbolic gesture to something that has more teeth to it. Could the resolution then be something that is turned into, again, letters we've been sending to the governor and to our Senate and representatives? Could it be letters to the editor? So how can it have more teeth to it than just a resolution? And that's just a question. And then I think Ms. Freeman, you had your hand up. And
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Dr. Harrell. Well, Dr. Harrell, you did have a question. Would you like Bobby to answer that before I go?
I think it was not rhetorical, but it was one that we can all answer through our discussion, I think.
Okay, and I know that Bobby, you have made that letter available to us as you've sent out the information to the coalition as well, it is written as a letter, not what I would consider a typical resolution. Very well written, Bobby. I think it's important that we go forward as much as we possibly can with one voice. I think that means a whole lot to those people, and yes, to the governor's office, to TEA, to the media, however we can get that information across. And I do know, and Dr. Woods, and I don't know if this is an opportunity to maybe even, I don't think it needs to be modified, Bobby, but in our conversation here, I know that the governor has just released some new guidelines or extended some more flexibility to schools. Are you able to, this is relatively new, are you able to speak to that at this point?
Yeah, in a media interview 30 minutes ago or so, the governor said that soon, and no definition of what soon means, that we would hear about additional flexibility with regard to the opening of the school year. So we'll wait and see what that means.
Okay, thanks. And just one other thing, and this is just a comment and a thank you to Dr. Woods. Dr. Woods appeared on MSNBC today. So national notoriety, Dr. Woods. I thought the interview was well done, and you certainly expressed our concerns, our concerns here in the state of Texas. So I think it's a great opportunity that we do have those types of avenues to express how we, what our concerns are here. Thank you. And again, just as a summary, I think it'd be a great idea to have this this letter, a similar letter, go forward.
Okay, thanks a lot. I agree. Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Dr. Harrell. I was wondering if the coalition piece that went out, Bobby, is just to the coalition, and will it go somewhere else beyond that? And I could certainly see us not only doing a resolution, but also doing an op-ed piece in the newspaper. I think there are a bunch of different things that can be done. And I certainly feel like we need to, but we need for everybody, including all the teachers that we just heard from, to know that there have been no decisions made, and certainly their safety is being taken into consideration in everything we do. If they're still listening, they need to know that. We're not trying to send people someplace where they're not willing to go. And there are a number of things that we could do, and I think we need to compile sort of a list of those things, how we can, because people are saying we haven't told anybody anything. Well, right now it's a changing situation all the time, so there are no definite plans one way or the other, but certainly certain things are off the table. So I certainly think we should do some sort of a resolution and perhaps even an op-ed piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Reed. Ms. Chubley?
So many years ago, when I was with PTA Council, and we were trying to get some changes made in relation to school nurse. And so we met with legislators. And one of the things that resonated with me that we were told is that hundreds of people sending a copy of the same letter is not as productive as individuals taking a statement or a series of thoughts and putting them into their own words and sending to legislators. And so what...
Ms. Chubley, can I stop you for just a minute? It got real muffled.
Oh, I didn't have problems with the hearing from others. So what I was saying, Cheryl, is that previously in working with legislators, one comment that they made that stuck with me was that getting copies of the same letter over and over from 100 people is not as
powerful a message as if you have a message, but then people put that into their own words. I mean, just think about some of the powerful statements that were made tonight by those individuals that spoke to the board. So I think one thing that we could do as a board that would be beneficial is create a letter, but create more of talking points of things that are important, and then have, ask our constituency, ask our teachers and our parents and our students, because I thought we had very articulate students this evening, to put those talking points into their own words and send those to the governor and Commissioner Morath, the state board, and those that are going to be making these decisions and mandating to us what we can and cannot do in relation to the opening of school. So I think a resolution is great, and it's something that we can send, but I really would like to have us create talking points that we can share with all the individuals that are with us tonight, and work together as a true Northside family to make our concerns known.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lopez or Mr. Medina? Want to make sure I didn't miss you before I go back to Mr. Blunt.
Just briefly, this is Mr. Medina. So I was just going over, again, I want to reiterate what Ms. Reed just stated, that, that those who spoke and those that we've heard from phone calls and emails and so forth, that their voice does not fall on deaf ear. And we are with empathy and sincerity moving forward and taking those notes, and like Ms. Chumley is creating a uniform topic, and that we can come together and unite and make sure that legislation, whether it's state, local, and national, that they understand that public education is for the future, and it's going to be here, and it's not going anywhere. And though we're going through this terrible, terrible time with the pandemic and the future of funding public education and so forth, that we're in it 110% moving forward. But again, we want to make sure that all those that spoke and that those that are visible, that are listening, that they understand that they have our full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medina.
Yeah, no, Mr. Medina beat me to the punch already, but yeah, I mean, just like everybody else, I mean, it's about valuing what each individual said today, and we got to share that message with the legislators, because I do too. I have a son that's at Warren, and he's afraid. So I think a lot of what we're talking here today, we've got to be able to bring it all together, one message or in a couple of points, like what Melissa said, and whether it's through a resolution, which I'm okay with, but along with giving out speaking points for our public to help us advocate to our legislators. So I'm fine either way.
Carol, you're on mute.
Bobby, back to you, and then
I'm sorry.
Ms. Thank you.
Yeah, last thing I'll bring up, just to differentiate, to answer the other part of your question. So once again, ideal, this one come from the coalition, is for the trustees to take a stand and also to pinpoint to the governor the specific concerns that we have. I agree with everything else said, and the ideal, and agree with Melissa, was that we have 3 major points we want to make that we think is going to resolve the situation that we're currently in. And then each of the different areas bring in their specifics that may be unique to them. So it's not a common letter that everybody has, but we all had the same points. Hey, look, we need the local control, we need the flexibility, we're very concerned, et cetera. And then they may give examples of their own. But again, that one is meant to be from really from the boards, to get the board of trustees to stand up. Now we could do the same thing. And again, we can have the district vantage point also, which I agree from all the people that spoke today. But I think it's very important that we also do it from a board sake. And that's all I had. Thanks.
And personalize it to Northside. And then tell me the 3 points again: local control, flexibility, funding. What was the
agility, the schedule part, the agility.
That flexibility?
Yeah, no, the flexibility is more along the choices of whether in school, virtual, et cetera. The agility part is to be able to adjust if the crisis gets worse, if we need 3 weeks, if we need 6 weeks, let us determine that. Don't dictate what the time periods are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blunt. Ms. Freeman.
Yes, Dr. Harrell, just one other thing. Board members here have expressed the interest regarding bringing some of the points that those people who have spoken to us tonight to bring those forward. Just a thought here, the governor just issued additional flexibility, and I think there's a lot of reasons why that happened. But I think one of them is that our voices did resonate perhaps with him in certain ways, whether it be the superintendents, whether it be trustees. Our teachers have, I think, been relentless in getting a hold of the governor, and so have some of our community members. So I think all of that has made a difference. So however we can communicate the information, I think it would be to our advantage. And we're all voters here, and I think there's some people that are listening. Thank you.
Great. I agree. Thank you. Ms. Chumbley?
Okay, so kind of to wrap it up for this evening, so at our retreat on Friday, we had talked about having this resolution on the last board meeting, our normal board meeting, but we all felt that that was too far, that we wanted to do something right away. So from the conversation that we've had, what is our next step, and what do we need to do from a board approval perspective this evening? And how are we going to set up on writing a letter? Are we going to use the coalitions? Bobby, thank you for doing that, and tailor it specifically to Northside. One thing that I would suggest is I've found that on business letters, less is more in the event in relation to someone is going to read a one-page letter where sometimes multiple pages they put aside. And so if we can tailor the Northside one, because Bobby, there was so much that had to be presented from the coalition, because you're not just representing just Northside. But if we can tailor the Northside letter to really hit very hard, specific, those 3 factors that I think we all agree we want to have, and then, add some specific language to that. Dr. Woods, any recommendations on how we move forward from here?
Hang on just a second, Ms. Chumbley. Mr. Lopez, did you have a comment?
No,
I saw
ma'am.
your hand earlier and wrote it down. Okay, thanks. And I had a real quick question, Brian, that maybe you could tie it in. Is it allowable tonight to go ahead, because it said possible action, that we approve possible action on a resolution and we craft that out tomorrow? So do we have to have the verbiage for the resolution? As long as we say we agree upon tonight that the resolution will contain those 3 or 4 points, then also have that bite to it where we craft out a letter using Ms. Chumbley's suggestions of the bullet points with levels of specificity that personalize it to Northside. So it's kind of a double question for your opinion as well.
And my recommendation, and per the conversation tonight, is that really we create a letter. My take is that a letter is more nimble. You can share it with state officials that we've talked about tonight, but I think you can also make your position known with local folks who at some point may weigh in on these conversations. And I think you can share it with media. And I think that at this time, that's a powerful thing. So if that is acceptable to the board, I don't believe that you need action. I think we can, Naomi's paying attention. She's listening in on this meeting. I think between she and I, we can take, and the really fine letter that Bobby's already written, we can take that, we can craft it to be specific to Northside, and then share that with the board for edits, I don't know that formal action is needed. I think it's crystal clear that the board wants to act on this, or I shouldn't have said act. The board wants to move forward on this, and I think we can help you with that in short order.
And could it also possibly, I'm trying to remember who said it, but if we wanted, we've had several people say, how can we be more active? Could it be posted or a similar version of that with those bullet points, and then include our senators' email addresses, our representatives, governor's office, those real key places, even the news media outlets. I know I've had to look them up. I'll share some of the ones I've been hitting up, and they've mostly been people who have not been, or legislators who have not been very pro public ed. So, but I would love to widen that net.
Naomi's really good at this. I think we can get this knocked out by the end of the week.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you. Lopez.
Yeah, thank you. Could we include in that letter maybe one or two testimonials of some of the comments that we heard from the individuals? Because there were some really powerful ones there, and I don't know if maybe with their permission we could use one or two of those testimonials.
Sure, I seem to
With
reason.
Yeah, with your suggestion and Mr. And Dr. Woods agreeing to it, if you had some pearls, as I call them, there were numerous.
There was a lot of them.
Yeah, if you want to email them, that would be great. That would be great. It was wonderful hearing from everybody today. Everybody has a different story, and it just was incredibly powerful and heartwarming. And
You know, one I can think of, I'm sorry, Dr. Harrell, is one I could think of, one of the students that testified, that spoke. I'm trying to find her name. And maybe one of the teachers and a parent, right? All three of those would be good, or, just to really show a diverse group.
Yeah, we can get on that first thing in the morning and then try to get you a draft either late tomorrow or first thing the next day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much. So if it's okay with the board, there's no action, but there will be action. we're gonna have a letter. So yay, I like that. Any other discussion on that, or any other comments?
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
You just need to keep up the good work. And Superintendent, you're doing a fantastic job. I just am so sorry that I missed the stuff on MSNBC this morning. But it's not only that. We know that you've been meeting with the people in Austin over the last couple of weeks, the last week in particular, almost like every day, if not twice a day. So thank you for all your efforts. And we just need to make sure that our teachers for sure understand that they are not going to be sent somewhere they don't want to go. So thank you.
Ms. Reed. Any other closing comments? All right, well, it is now 8:15, and I will move to close our meeting for the day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.